Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 341. Tian Fa's millions depend on the success or failure of one person. You dare to come here and steal our treasures? You've courted your death. I'll chase you to the ends of Tian Fa and kill you. There was still no reply. And this had made the Xian Beast King, who was chief of all the poisonous beasts, extremely mad. 2 generations of lords had wished for it for hundreds of years. Millions of Xian beasts had labored for 350 years to grow this. Many of my brothers and sisters had been anxiously waiting for hundreds of years for this fruit. Could it be that I've lost it? This isn't good. I'd rather die than allow this to happen. The Xian Snake King Green Hunter was losing it due to the anger. Her beautiful eyes had turned a miserable shade of green. And her green clothes had started to flutter even though there was no wind. She then looked up and let out a world-shaking hiss. The Xian Beast King had brandished her jade-like arms and had released the entirety of her strength. She hadn't held back even a bit. This was the full strength of that generation's Xian Snake King. The target of that unleashed strength was a circumference of over 300 meters with her at the center. And no living creature could avoid it if they were within those limits. Bang! This attack was no different than an atom bomb's explosion in magnitude. And the dark night was suddenly covered with a slowly rising mushroom-like cloud. It seemed as if this explosion had shaken the entire night scene. In fact, it seemed as if a slumbering demon had just opened his eyes. It seemed like a huge black hole had appeared to engulf everything in this space. Meanwhile, the Xian beasts near and far trembled and hissed as her furious roar traveled into the distance. The entire Tian Fa forest was suddenly set into movement. The flying beasts quickly rushed over. And the Tian Fa forest started to resemble a giant creature that had just woken up from its slumber. An incomparable burst of vitality and tremendous strength had burst out in a short moment. Then, 2 other roars emanated in unison. And they seemed to be in support of the Xian Snake King. The roars hadn't yet died down when Long Crane and Big Bear arrived besides the Xian Beast King, Green Hunter. The 3 stood together in a tripod formation. Each of their faces appeared dignified. A rare beast's footprints could be seen in a secluded nook of the Tian Fa forest. A thick white substance floated in the air like a dense mist would have. And that white fog had enshrouded a humanoid entity in its midst. The mist was so thick that it almost seemed solid. Any knowledgeable individual would have been gobsmacked to witness this sight. It was unexpectedly, the heaven's spirit was being used to move the earth. The level of this individual's Xian cultivation was very deep. In fact, this level of cultivation had already reached the peak as per the common beliefs in the Xian continent. In fact, no more than 10 individuals would possess such power even if the secret of families and the 3 holy lands were taken into account. The white mist had started to revolve with increasing urgency. And it had soon taken the shape of a whirlwind. A shio sound was being emitted from time to time from this whirlwind. This individual had obviously reached a critical juncture in his practice. The wild hiss of the Snake King Green Hunter was full of terror, anger, and worry. And her wrathful scream had traveled a long distance to reach this place. Therefore, it had sounded very faintly in this area. However, the sound had still managed to retain its meaning. And the message in this sound hit this individual shrouded in the white mist like thunder from the clear sky, to speak the least of it. The mist was somewhat shaken by this. Moreover, the mist's speed of rotation was also affected by this, and gradually became slower. In fact, it was somewhat scattered. This Snake King had unleashed this hiss with the entirety of her strength. Moreover, her voice was mournful and full of hate. So, anyone could understand that this lengthy roar was full of inexhaustible sorrow and despair. Ah, scarlet blood sprayed out from inside the white mist. And the area that was shrouded in white mist was suddenly dyed red by the blood. The white mist that had nearly reached a state of congealment had suddenly been ruined in its entirety. Sharp breathing sounds were heard from the dense white fog as it started to dilute. A long time passed before the exhausted voice of an individual was heard. And this infinitely dismal voice said, "This is the will of the heaven, the will of the heavens has played with us, that's all." Then, the voice made a few coughing sounds. And it seemed as if its owner had become weaker in health as he murmured. The old lord of Tian Fa had left a few lines behind at that time. Tian Fa won't find what it seeks. The beast kings will die. The Tian Fa's million will depend on the success of failure of one person. I've been thinking over the meaning of these sentences for hundreds of years, but I still hadn't been able to solve them. However, I understand their true meaning today. These words had predicted the fate of the Tian Fa forest. Haha, that was completely unexpected. The first part said Tian Fa won't get what it seeks. Green Hunter was guarding the sacred fruit. So, I presume that something bad has happened. Why else would she lose her mind like this? The second part said the beast kings will die. I presume that this line foretells our deaths. The final part said Tian Fa's millions will depend on the success or failure of one person. I presume that this part speaks of the man who stole Tian Fa's sacred fruit. This person has stolen the sacred fruit at a time when the world's Xian experts are amassing outside Tian Fa to attack us. Moreover, I was on the verge of making a breakthrough, and had wished to suppress the surge of strength in order for the breakthrough at such a critical junction. Therefore, I wasn't to be disturbed even a bit at this moment. I would have then met that Li Ju Tian head-on. But I wasn't to be alarmed in any manner at this critical moment. But that scream of Green Hunter had publicly declared the theft of our sacred treasure. Our precious treasure had been lost, so how could I have felt at ease? This alarm boiled my blood. And so, I was unable to continue with the final step I had so meticulously prepared for. Perhaps I will never have a breakthrough now. Ah! So, that's what the dying old lord of Tian Fa had forecasted. Okay, however, I won't allow that Li Ju Tian to have an easy time either. The voice of that individual became softer, and reached such a low that it was nothing more than a mere whisper. But the flavor of resentment in his voice was extremely intense, and had even become stronger with the passage of his speech. Li Ju Tian. This your fault. I will kill you for sure. What happened? Ninth younger sister? Long Crane asked with a sense of urgency. What has made you this mad? The Snake Xian King's face was pale. Her lips trembled as she turned around. She was shook all over, and 2 teardrops left her eyes. Then, she spoke up, and it seemed that she was choking with emotion. Third elder brother. Fourth elder brother, the sacred fruit, it had matured, but just when it did it was stolen. Even the Snake Xian King couldn't endure such a heavy blow. She felt infinite despair. So, she started crying bitterly after she saw that Long Crane and Big Bear had rushed forth to assist her. Tian Fa's sacred fruit had been related to the forest for hundreds of years, and would have had positive effect upon it for many more in the future. So, it was obviously an object of great importance. And this obviously meant that they couldn't mess up in the regard. Therefore, the Snake Xian King had been assigned to take care of it. But the powerful enemy had waited till that critical juncture, and had stolen the fruit from her hands. Long Crane and Big Bear were dumbstruck. They looked to the heavens for a good while. Then, they turned their gaze to the Snake King. What? The sacred fruit was stolen? How's this possible? How did it even happen? It's true, Green Hunter hadn't acted with the elegance of a Xian beast king this entire time. She couldn't help but reveal her feelings, and how depressed she felt with this matter on her mind. In fact, she spoke of the entire sequence of incidents in breaks. Did you set up a proper perimeter? Has there been any news of the thief? Long Crane asked in a sinking voice. I did set the perimeter, it is intact every place without exception, everything's normal, but third brother the sacred fruit, it disappeared without a trace. Green Hunter started to weep again. Don't worry. It's true that the sacred fruit has been stolen post its maturity. But our hundreds of years of work hasn't been wasted yet. We still have a chance to get it back. The fact that this person was able to come here and steal the sacred fruit without setting off any alarms at the perimeter explains two things. The first is that this individual is far stronger than us. We would have been able to spot that person if it weren't so. Therefore, there are no doubts about their capability. We have to accept this as a fact. The stronger are always likely to prevail. So, would it have been easy for you to handle him on your own? And the second point is that that person hasn't escaped after stealing the sacred fruit. So, they mustn't be very far from here. And searching carefully will help us. But this incident has already taken place. So, there's no use worrying about. We just need to focus on solving this problem. No one would have thought that it would be the Bear King who'd managed to calm in such a situation. In fact, he was even focused and tactful with his approach. This was completely unexpected. A wise man can make mistakes when he makes 1,000 decisions. And even a fool can counsel the wise at times. Those were very wise words. Jun Moxie couldn't help but praise. That stupid bear has a streak of intelligence. This is a rare sight. The Bear King's words were genuinely reasonable. The Snake King and the Crane King looked on with shining eyes. They felt that those words were very rational. Long Crane nodded and silently looked up. Then, he let out a loud screech. And his screech pierced through the air as he uttered a few strange syllables. Then, the scout aerial beasts in Tian flapped their wings in unison. And they moved towards the three beast kings in orderly formations. It seemed that all of them were crowding around the area. Then, Big Bear also roared, and the terrestrial Xian beasts, including those on the trees, started to arrive in a dignified manner. The Snake King also issued an order, and the poisonous Xian beasts come over. Soon, the aerial, the terrestrial and the poisonous Xian beasts, the three types of them, had come over to that place. 1,000,000 of them would crowd around the thief, and would prevent his escape if he was present in that area. In fact, this crowd would squeeze him to death even if he tried to cram in. The land and the sky in that area was so densely packed by now that it had become similar to an iron bucket. Even water would need the Xian beast's permission to flow out of it, it would otherwise remain stuck there. Every nook and cranny on the ground, the sky, and even the area underground had been densely packed with the three types of Xian beasts due to this move. In fact, the underground terrain was so densely packed with poisonous snakes and insects that even the rainwater would have a hard time in seeping down to the earth. How many Xian beasts must have gathered here to create this effect? Jun Moxie felt his head go numb. He gazed into the distance and felt that he was stuck in an endless ocean of Xian beasts. The beasts wouldn't even need to attack if they were to find the thief. Their saliva alone would be enough to drown him. This kind of manpower in a search mission could even find a needle in this vast forest, let alone a living individual. The Tiger King, the Lion King, the Monkey King, the Eagle King, and the youngest the Wolf King, all came rushing over at this moment. Each one of them had a dignified expression since they knew what had happened. Their arrival resulted in more Xian beasts being added to this perimeter. And many more Xian beasts were charging in from the distance. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 342. The mysterious master shows up and has some other plans. The Snake King felt very guilty. She looked at everyone with an expression of regret. In fact, her expression was almost that of shame. Search everything carefully. Check every blade of grass and every tree's nook. Do it even if it seems like a waste of time. Long Crane raised his hand as he issued this command. His voice was stern, and his eyebrows were raised as if he was in a murderous mood. There are 8 of us here. So, we'll each be responsible for one particular direction. We must pay attention to each other's actions and coordinate accordingly. The beasts of level 9 and above must prepare themselves for a fight. We mustn't allow that man to escape if he's present here. Be warned that this man is extremely capable and skilled. So, anyone who discovers anything unusual must first issue a warning signal. The Xian Beast Kings agreed in response. They had crazed expressions in their eyes. They had been waiting for the Tian Fa's scared fruit for hundreds of years. And it had been stolen just like that? Who here wouldn't be mad? The Xian Beast Kings were on the verge of setting into action, when suddenly, an extremely terrifying and earth-shattering pressure descended from the heavens with a loud bang. It seemed as if the 9 heavens had exerted their pressure on Tian Fa from the sky above. In fact, this pressure pressed so heavily on their heads that one could reach out with their hand and touch the heavens if they were close by. This power was immense, magnificent and formidable. It felt like a lofty mountain had descended down upon them. Big Bear and the other Xian Beast Kings felt that they couldn't ever resist such a thing. In fact, this feeling had arisen from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, they couldn't help turning pale with fear and shock. The Xian Beast King's cultivation still fared decent against this pressure. However, the beasts below their cultivation level slunk down on the ground in one movement. They then neatly lowered their heads to the ground and didn't dare to make any movements. The level 9 Xian beasts could barely stand on their feet. However, their bodies, including their legs, trembled. And it was evident that they didn't have any fighting spirit left in them. This scene was similar to one when an ordinary person would come face to face with a lofty god. This great god could easily manipulate that person's life in the palm of his hand once he had appeared. So, the said person had submitted to him and had allowed the god to amuse himself to his desire. Perhaps that said person was marvelous and might even be a royal by blood. And perhaps he possessed overwhelming and superhuman power and could control many people in his territory. But it didn't matter how frightening or marvelous or grand he was. He would still be an ordinary mortal in front of this lofty god. Therefore, the difference between them would be such that he would never be able to resist the god's influence. The 8 Xian Beast Kings felt the same thing in their hearts. The entirety of Tian Fa's strength won't be able to retrieve the sacred fruit if this person has taken it. No one had heard this person's voice. Nor had anyone seen this individual as of yet, however. This thought had already crossed the minds of every Xian Beast King. This man seems to be more frightening than the heavens. He's like a god. We will die if we are rash enough to challenge him. The 8 Xian Beast Kings struggled and raised their heads to look into the air. However, only they had the courage to do so. A black figure was suspended in the air. He was clothed in black. His face and even his feet were covered with a black cloth. However, he appeared as steady as a formidable mountain as he hovered midair. It was night time, and the man was completely garbed in black. But it still seemed like an extremely bright sun had set forth its unending rays. This figure seemed so dazzling that one simply couldn't look at it directly. It was only Long Crane and Big Bear who felt a familiar feeling in their hearts. Is it him? That fruit was mine. So, I have taken it, the mysterious man announced in an elderly, sonorous, and clear voice. The tenor of his voice was enough to tell of the undeniable authority he possessed. One could discern from his voice that he thought in the following manner: "This is my world. And so, I will take whatever I so desire. This is the natural course of things." However, the mysterious person also explained his words: "Because this heavenly material will be too great a waste in your hands." He then let out a mournful sigh, and this sorrowful sigh lasted for ages. Then, he said, "The mere wastage of this material wouldn't have been an issue on its own. The 8 of you are at an advanced stage, but none of you can safely consume this spiritual fruit's essence and efficacy. I fear that each one of you will explode and die if you do go ahead and try to absorb its efficacy. There will be no exceptions to this outcome." Then, he snorted in a dignified and cold manner. It would be reckless for anyone to try and take this fruit with such a low cultivation. Such an individual must have become tired of living by then. So, such an individual might as well take a knife to his throat and slash it if they don't wish to live on. But why should such a worthwhile spiritual treasure be wasted? The 8 Xian beast kings looked at each other in dismay after they listened to those words. There were many wild and untamed hearts present amongst them. They knew that the opposite party's strength was a mystery, and they wouldn't be able to match him. However, they also knew the benefits of the sacred fruit. So, how could they be convinced of that one-sided story? Therefore, a bewildered clamor rose in response. This was especially true for the Snake King. Her beautiful eyes were shooting flames, and her fists were clenched. It seemed that she was about set into action. "Sire, did we have the pleasure of meeting you in the Tianxiang city as well?" Long Crane waved his hand to suppress the rising revolts from his younger siblings as he asked his question in a very cautious tone. He seemed rather uncertain, and couldn't help but wonder. This feeling is very familiar. But this person is still giving a very different feeling. It feels that this person is far superior to the one we brothers met in Tianxiang City. In fact, he seems far more powerful. Big Bear had the same apprehensions. The two brothers had somewhat realized who this individual was, but they weren't fully convinced yet. Could it be that the mysterious and masked person was able to make such a tremendous breakthrough in just 2 months? This is a very frightening speed of progress. Isn't this just too freakish? However, they were completely unaware that Jun Moxie had only revealed a small subset of his real ability when they had met in the Tianxiang city. In other words, he had only set off a small portion of the Hongjun Pagoda's real aura field. However, his ability and control had increased since then. Moreover, this object was far more precious. Therefore, he'd need to create a stronger and overwhelming deterrent effect if he wanted to win this fruit over. Thus, the young Master Jun hadn't held back one bit, and had unleashed the Hongjun Pagoda's aura field to the maximum potential he could achieve at his current level of strength. The end result wasn't very different in this case either. However, there was still a world of difference in the force he had mobilized. How could these two instances be mentioned in the same breath? Jun Moxie had showed himself for 2 reasons. The first was to follow his original plan. The second was the extremely distraught appearance of the Xian beast kings he had gotten to see, He couldn't bear that sight. After all, how many of them must have cultivated this plant for hundreds of years? He couldn't fathom the effort and the labor which had gone into growing it. How many generations were spent to successfully bring this plant to fruition? Would it be fitting if I were to take it for myself? I should only take a small part of it. Perhaps half of it. Jun Moxie had a clear conscience in this regard. However, he wasn't going to act despicable when it came to the other half of it. Jun Moxie wasn't going to allow the generations' worth of hard work of those beasts and the labors of millions go to waste. These straightforward Xian beasts were much better and amiable than humanity in Jun Moxie's eyes. Therefore, he would obviously wish to help them if he could. How can I just look on as these high-level beasts explode to their deaths? It doesn't matter what happens to my future plans or the other goals I have. It'll be a huge pity if these beasts die. It doesn't matter if I use them or not. I will do this for good karma. And because this is the right thing to do even if I don't use these guys in the future. It was important to note that every person wanted to meet such a master, but couldn't. Therefore, it was obviously important to illustrate this situation in an ideal manner. And this pretense was an optimal means to do so. Long Crane. Big Bear. Your acts have genuinely surprised this old man. Jun Moxie sighed like an old and decrepit man. This old man didn't wish to involve himself in dealing with a matter as trivial as the Shui Han manor. So, I gave it to the two of you. It was such a simple task. However, engaging the two of you has turned into a Xian beast uprising beyond all expectations. This is quite unreasonable. But the issue still remains unresolved. Moreover, half of the world's Xian experts have gathered here. This is your business. And this old man has no relation with it. It had to happen, and so it happened. But this old man is quite curious. When did Tian Fa's strength become so weak? This old man remembers that we had agreed upon a deadline. It was 1 month, wasn't it? Since when did 1 month become 70 days long in Tian Fa? It really is you. Old Sire, Long Crane and Big Bear recognized him and burst out together. They suddenly breathed easy. But they were also flushed with anger and shame. Their faces were hot with embarrassment. In fact, they would dig a hole and hide in it if they could. This is very embarrassing. This person hasn't given us any room to save our reputation in the public. And, as for the reasons for breathing easy, it was rather simple. How could such a mysterious and capable master steal something like a common thief? He presumably has some deeper reasons that we can't understand. In any case, we are certain that we won't suffer any disadvantages in this matter. They knew that this mysterious master was accustomed to using such methods in every encounter. They knew that his man practiced his forte of lies and deceit with an unscrupulous, shameless, and faithless policy at will. He would break things, hit things, and whatnot. He would take advantage of a situation for personal gain with ease. In fact, this man's mastery in this art was so profound that it almost came to him naturally. And they had guessed this right. One would rarely find any trace of conscience in the young Master Jun. We're ashamed, esteemed sire. But you mustn't blame us, brother, for this. We genuinely went over to that Shui Han manor. But Li Ju Tian isn't a good man. And he has united half the continent's Xian experts against us. So we were left without any other option. And we then organized this uprising with the entirety of Tian Fa's strength. In fact, we discounted any cost or effort we may incur to complete your task. We made you a promise. So, we have decided that we would accomplish this goal even if it was very difficult. After all, the esteemed individual has given us a task. So, We've been going all out to finish it. Long Crane looked at him and hurriedly explained in his defense. The true meaning behind his words was rather obvious. We've gathered such a huge force here. And we've done it just for your task. How can you disregard that? You mustn't side with the humans to deal with us now. You can't act against us now. We did all this for your task and assembled such a large force to complete it. We've made so many efforts for you alone. But you are such a unique and exceptional individual, so we can't say this openly. However, we feel hurt. The reason why I had given that task to the two of you is because my identity is too important to deal with the Shui Han manner. Wouldn't it be too excessive for Li Ju Tian's status if I went and bullied them myself? Was this not clear to the two of you until now? The two of you knew enough to gather such a large force, but you still hadn't realized something this elementary about my assignment? Jun Moxie's belly had started to cramp. But his tone was still steady and stable, though it conveyed a meaning of regret. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 343. Whoever believes in me will live forever. Yes, it's about your status. That you are so tough that it'll be humiliating to deal with him. You'll be bullying Li Ju Tian if you act, because that man is a real bastard. So you can't do it yourself. And you'll lose your dignity if you do so. Big Bear drew his thick lips as he spoke this in a fluent manner. This has been going on for so long that this mysterious man has also come down south. The original agreement stands voided at this time. However, there was a faint hint in the man's voice, and it suggested that he would like them to continue. This made their hearts fill with joy. And they were ready to follow instructions without delay. This mysterious man is giving us another opportunity. Doesn't this mean that we have a chance to do what we planned? This is great. Yes. It was just that Li Ju Tian was the second greatest master, and someone like Big Bear wasn't even worth a fart to him. In fact, this comparison was an exaggeration. So? Jun Moxie muttered to himself. And so, we're here to do you bidding. Long Crane and Big Bear's mouths hardly moved as they got up and thumped their chests. They seemed to be rearing to start with the task. If that's the case, good. Jun Moxie sighed like an old man. The tone of his voice was one of waning interest, and one of loneliness. He spoke in a desolate voice. This old man is in no mood to deal with that young Li Ju Tian. We're glad that you don't have any interest in handling this matter. But you can feel at ease. We brothers will complete the task in a satisfactory manner for you. Big Bear clapped his hands and responded sharply. Long Crane had a thought. That young Li Ju Tian, good God. This man's manner of speaking is much more mature from the time we met him in Tianxiang. It doesn't matter what the esteemed sire is interested or not interested in. The sacred fruit is my Tian Fa's property. The Snake King looked worried as she took a step forward and spoke. This youngster was instructed to guard the sacred fruit. But the fruit was taken from this youngster, and this will be considered as a fault on my part. Therefore, I request that you return the fruit. I will never be grateful enough if you do so, and I will never dare forget this gesture. The Snake King Green Hunter's manner of speech was neither servile nor overbearing. In fact, it was according to propriety. Jun Moxie was genuinely impressed by this, contrary to what one might expect. It was just that, would the young Master Jun's character ever allow him to give away a good thing he had already gotten his hands on? Oh. This energetic little girl is talking so sharply that it seems as if she's scolding me. Is that so, little girl? Jun Xie was employing his evil intentions with those words. His voice had sunk. But it still had incomparably frightful and tyrannical power in its make. First, he would try to threaten with his prestige and intimidate the opposite party. And then, he would try to frighten even further just in case it was required. Green Hunter's expression was of a person who had just witnessed a formidable mountain. She groaned in a depressed manner and took 3 steps back. Yet, she strove to stand her ground even though her face was somewhat pale. She stubbornly raised her head and spoke. "It's this youngster's responsibility. I can't abandon this at any cost." The senior seems to be offended by Green Hunter's ignorance and wishes to teach her a lesson. But Green Hunter only requests him to return the sacred fruit to her even if he does punish her later for her insolence. Long Crane was anxious. Green Hunter had actually offended the mysterious and skilled man. The retrieval of the sacred fruit was a trivial matter. However, the mysterious man could easily decide her little fate if he got angry, and raised his hand thereafter. Therefore, Long Crane had no choice but to hurriedly interject. "Please calm down, esteemed sire. Green Hunter is young and ignorant. She's only anxious about the fruit. She doesn't mean to offend. Please ignore her remarks." "What Tian Fa's sacred fruit? Why are you confusing the names?" Jun Moxie continued evilly. "This is obviously the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand things. Do as you may, little girl. You 8 little Xian beasts think that you're very strong. But I'm telling you clearly that you're not. You won't be able to handle the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. 1 drop from this fruit will overcome you. None of you will be able to handle it no matter who it is. This old man has revealed himself and has done this deed out of kindness. Are you unable to tell the good from the bad? Don't tell me that this little girl doesn't recognize this old man's magnanimity and is actually haggling with me." Second step. Lay it out. If this doesn't convince her, then, to explode and die would be this youngster's fate. The Snake King was being stubborn. She opened her delicate and small white hand. She was hell-bent on her course. And she was consistently ignoring Long Crane and Big Bear's strong gazes and meaningful glances. "You're saying that we 3rd and the 4th brother shouldn't be anxious? Our job is to only assist the rest of you in advancing with the use of the sacred fruit. But the side effects of the fruit are very dangerous. So it would be excellent if we had another method. And this mysterious person before us seems to have a better method. Therefore, it'll be great if we can form better relations with the masked person in lieu of the fruit. The profit will be much higher than the losses suffered." Yet, Green Hunter is speaking her heart and is making a complete mess out of things. The sacred fruit is already in his hand. And it's obvious that he's far stronger than us. So, how can you even do this? It's not like this old man will just leave without causing a problem. It would be great if he does so. But what if he gets mad? He can get rid of us very easily. So why are you provoking him with your words? Ah, this little girl's words are reasonable in this regard. This old man has taken your fruit. He did it with good intentions, but he has still taken your fruit. And that is indeed unreasonable of him. But it'll be a waste of resources if I let your presumptuous self consume it. Moreover, it'll be hard to avoid the threat to your life. This means we have been brought together by fate. This old man plans to use this fruit to refine medicine. And he will do it right. It seemed that Jun Moxie had a pained expression on his face. In fact, It nearly seemed that he had suddenly gained weight. This 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit is important for this old man in refining his medicines. And you need this fruit for nothing more than making a breakthrough. Therefore, this old man will finish refining the pills, and will give you several of them. You can then rejoice and make a non-frightening and non-dangerous breakthrough. So, what do you think about this? The 8 of you are anyway on the verge of exploding to your deaths. So, what do you have to say about a non-frightening and non-dangerous method where there's no fear of death? This was the third and the final step. Jun Moxie would run out of all possible means if she wasn't convinced after this. Jun Moxie had a mean cunningness to him, but he would have no choice but to leave in stealth if this didn't work. However, his words made the eyes of the Xian Beast Kings present shine almost instantly. In fact, it also left the Snake King to hesitate. Her third brother Crane and fourth brother Bear were continuously staring at her. They were urging in their heart, "Just hurry up and agree to this, younger sister Green Hunter." Every Xian Beast King present was well aware that there was a high chance of succumbing to death due to the fruit's side effect. They would be telling a complete lie if they said that they weren't afraid or nervous of this possibility. But they had decided to take the risk for increased strength and a longer lifespan. However, they could now avoid this frightening and dangerous method, and could advance in a smooth and settled way if they wished it. How could they not be excited? None of the Xian Beast Kings would have believed these words if an ordinary person had spoken them. They would have thought you donghua cheat. This kind of nonsense is merely a case of swindling by a crafty cheat. You think we can be swindled? You must be dreaming. But who was this person before them? This is a very able person. His cultivation is even higher than our Lord's. And third and fourth have confirmed that he can easily help us advance. Moreover, there is another undeniable and shocking proof, even if third brother Crane and fourth brother Bear's testimony is unreliable or questionable. That iron-winged panther's cub has made it to level 8 at such a young age. This obliterates any doubt that this man has some miraculous and devilish methods. Therefore, the Xian Beast Kings looked at the Snake King. And Green Hunter was left to fidget in her state of dilemma. How about this? You may be anxious, but do you even mistrust Long Crane and Big Bear? They can vouch for me. They thoroughly understand this old man. So, how about it? He fanciful little girl. Wouldn't Long Crane and Big Bear wish to protect me and vouch for my authenticity? I'll even refine one for you. The young Master Jun had spoken this in the manner of an old person. He then turned to look for the Crane and the Bear Kings. He then opened his eyes in order to look for their support. We will vouch for him. Will you distrust us? Ninth younger sister. Big Bear opened his mouth and spoke as he took the initiative. Long Crane was relatively cautious from the beginning. He felt something was wrong since the mysterious experts had taken the initiative to start this dialogue. But he thought that he was merely imagining things. So he kept quiet. Some hope is better than no hope. Agreed. Then how much time will the senior take to refine the dawn? The Snake King hesitated for a moment since she felt embarrassed. She then bit her red lips and asked in an awkward manner. Dang! She's a heartbreaker. She looked so appealing with that lip biting. Jun Moxie groaned inside. His mind had started to run off by the time he hastily stabled it. Then, he extended 3 fingers to indicate a time of 3 years. I can finish this in 3 years, including finding the necessary ingredients. He was in the middle of speaking this when he suddenly thought of something. So, he searched around in his clothes and said, This old man won't take you youngsters' possessions in a cheap manner. I had said earlier that we've been brought together by fate. So, I will help you somewhat. There's some medicine inside this bottle. I've been practicing and trifling with below-quality materials. So, taking these medicines will only increase your cultivation by 10 years. Ah! I wish I had better ingredients. These things would have been more effective in that case. He took out 8 dawn as he spoke, and threw them high in the sky. There weren't many there. There was one for each individual. That is one for each beast king. The Lion King and Tiger King showed signs apprehension since they didn't know if they could trust this man enough to take those dawn. However, Big Bear had no apprehensions whatsoever. So, he extended his neck and consumed the Dan. Then, he moved his aura around his body and became startled. He then called out, "Ha!" He had cycled his aura thrice inside his body. And he had already absorbed the efficacy from the Dan. Big Bear was already a top-level expert. In fact, his body was extremely powerful, and no humans could compare to him. So, he could obviously verify the result. He felt startled and pleased by the result. So, called out, "This Dan can genuinely raise your strength." Ah! It has raised my cultivation by 10 years at least. This is a heavenly medicine. Long Crane also got impatient after he looked at his younger brother and ingested a Dan himself. He was then left to seem pleasantly surprised. Everyone looked at Long Crane and Big Bear and figured that this wasn't a scam. So, the remaining Xian Beast Kings looked at each and then consumed their dawn. And they suddenly stood erect the next moment. Then, they all looked at Jun Moxie in unison. Their eyes were fervent. Good God! This world actually has a miraculous Dan that can increase one's cultivation like this. It really exists. My God! This doesn't even have any side effect. Each and every Xian Beast King's eyes had become even more fervent upon this realization. He's such a skilled person. Now I'm convinced that this mysterious person is extremely skilled and can refine those dawn from the sacred fruit. What did this senior say earlier? I've been practicing and trifling with below-quality materials. So, taking these medicines will only increase your cultivation by 10 years. Ah! I wish I had better ingredients. These medicines would have been even more effective in that case. Good God! What kind of dawn will he be able to refine if his dawn from below-quality materials have such an effect? The facts have been laid out now. What's there to be uncertain about? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We don't have to make a life or death decision to advance anymore. This is such a great thing. It wasn't even this good in our dreams. Jun Moxie's cloak fluttered as he floated in the air. He put his hand behind his back and stylishly floated up like the world's topmost expert of this era. Whoever believes in me will live forever. I've finally gained control of these foolish beings. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 344. Bumper Harvest. Jun Moxie sighed with relief. But his mouth twisted as he implored. I will be able to cross the 6th or 7th layer in 3 years. But I've showed a bold face and made claims to finish their task in a time period of 3 years. Oh yes. There's another thing which I had almost forgotten about. Jun Moxie put his hand behind his back in an eloquent manner. I heard that there will be a decisive battle between you and the Southern Heaven City. Is this the case? Yes. There's a battle. And it's scheduled to take place day after tomorrow. Long Crane replied in an even more respectful tone than before. Ahem. Tianxiang City's Jun family and the Dugu family have a somewhat special relationship with me. I hope that their people don't get hurt. It is a matter of honor for me. Jun Moxie had put this sudden request forth in special manner. It would seem to be a modest request if one were listening casually. But one would realize that it was a direct command if they paid careful attention. That won't be a problem. Long Crane chuckled. We had never intended to deal with them anyway. He thought for a moment, and took out a green bottle before he continued. Sprinkle the powder from this bottle on the men from these families before they take to the battlefield. We will surely recognize them if we come across them on the battlefield if this powder is present on their body. And we won't fight back even if they attack us. Thanks a lot for this. Jun Moxie smiled slightly. He showed neither happiness nor relief. The young master merely maintained a regular, mild, and easy appearance. The Xian beasts suddenly saw a flourishing spectacle. The shadow of the mysterious man couldn't be seen in the sky for a moment. Then, he had returned to his original position a moment later. The green bottle in Long Crane's hand had also disappeared at that exact moment. Such a magical move. The Beast Kings had started to admire him even more. He then considered the two objectives complete, and decided to return. But Jun Moxie naturally spoke a few words before he left, for he feared that the Xian beasts might think that he'd go back on his word if he vanished abruptly. However, he hadn't gotten far when he thought to himself, the decisive battle takes place day after tomorrow. That's still a while away. But I've stumbled upon this 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit here. How surprising. How many other miraculous treasures might I find in this place for ingredients? How could this young master forget the main reason he came to this place? An unbearable itch overtook his heart as this thought came to his mind. He initiated the yin-yang escape. His body flashed, and he leapt deeper into the forest. Within the forest, third elder brother, fourth elder brother, quickly tell me who that mysterious man is. And how are you two so familiar with him? You vouched our Tian Fa to him without even batting an eyelid. And you even guaranteed out our treasure? The Snake King Green Hunter asked in a doubtful tone. I understand that this person's power is unknown, and he's far more powerful than us. But I wish to know why you were so eager in his presence. Could it be that you have that much faith in him? This fruit was the jewel of our forest. We had labored for over 300 years to procure this fruit. Everyone else also looked at Long Crane and Big Bear after they heard this. Their heads were muddled, to be honest. The young Master Jun's alter ego had displayed a tremendous strength. It could even be said that he was the strongest in the whole world. But he was no threat to Tian Fa. Long Crane and Big Bear had talked about him before as well. However, the Xian Beast Kings wouldn't have cowered and given way even if Jun Moxie was difficult to deal with, and could kill each one of the Beast Kings. Long Crane and Big Bear had a proud look on their faces. After all, their relation with this unrivaled master had provided their siblings a means to advance without any dangers of a backlash. Therefore, they had effectively done a great service to their Tian Fa. All of them could advance. That too without any worries or fears. Therefore, their eyes were already full of the boundless prospects of the future. Something this good has never happened in the Tian Fa forest. This event will create history. The two joyfully opened their mouth in order to show off and speak a few words to display their superior personality. Won't having such a wide circle of friends mean having superior personality? But they immediately shut their mouths after they opened them since they were struck by a realization. Yes, Who knows who this mysterious person is? The two elder brothers of the Xian Beast Kings only knew him as Feng Qingyang. But little did they know that this name wasn't real. As for who this person was or where he lived and how he behaved, these two didn't know what to say about any of that. In fact, the two Xian Beast Kings hadn't discovered this most critical problem until this moment. My God! The two of us have trusted someone we know nothing about with such a big guarantee. We were both so eager and we did as was ordered. But how will us two brothers find him for getting the dawn which will help everyone advance if we get no news and if there isn't any communication from him after 3 years? Consuming the sacred fruit did have a huge risk. One could explode from doing so. But it's a sure method to increase one's strength. The no-risk and absolutely safe method did seem attractive. But it's only like a bread drawn on paper at present. It won't mean anything if we didn't get to eat it. I don't know how we'll find him if this deal falls through. They didn't know what to do after they thought it through clearly. The two Xian Beast Kings looked at each other. They were at a loss as to what they could do. The two had been caught unprepared. The rest of the Xian Beast Kings looked to the two for answers. But the two weren't making things clear. In fact, the others could also see that their complexion wasn't good. So they nervously asked, "What's the matter, third brother? Fourth brother? Why don't you speak? Why are you keeping these things hidden from your younger siblings? Why? You think we wipe his uncles? You're asking us for answers. But who do we ask? Dang! He won't betray us brothers, right?" The thoughts of both the brothers were getting increasingly muddled at that point. Long Crane was depressed. He couldn't help but flip his eyeballs as he spoke up. "Your anxiety isn't worth a fart. That man is a top-class expert with amazing cultivation. He may even be regarded as the strongest master ever born. Why would he diminish his reputation for a matter as trivial as taking away the sacred fruit from us? Anyway, do you think we could have resisted if he had wanted to take it from us by force? You need to be patient if you want this benefit. Why are you in a rush? That master said that he'll finish our assignment in the next 3 years. What's 3 years for us Beast Kings? We can sleep for a period longer than that. Now, why don't you guys start acting like Beast Kings again? Go about your own business. We have a battle upcoming in 2 days' time." Big Bear hastily cut in. "Exactly. Looking at your morose appearance is a pain in the ass. Hurry up and get lost. What are you waiting for? Just go. Raise your spirits. Not many enemies will be able to match you in the future." The other Xian Beast Kings felt discontent and unhappy. They cursed in the secrecy of their hearts. "You looked morose yourself. You think you are the only ones who are allowed to feel that way? How can we not feel bad? Ha!" Though they could do nothing else after they looked at the serious expressions on their two brothers' faces. They then scattered and went away. But the prospect of that beautiful dream continued to linger in their hearts. "Ah, we'll make a safe and seamless breakthrough in 3 years." Long Crane had spoken the truth. 3 years was nothing to these Xian Beast Kings. It was a very short period of time in their eyes. They had extremely long lifespans. They weren't immortal. But their lives were tenfold longer than those of an ordinary person. Perhaps much more than tenfold. 3 years wait for advancement and longer life. This is very profitable. It was like heavenly meat had fallen from the sky. Sure, there are some doubts. But this mysterious expert deserves complete trust. Moreover, he had displayed his amazing cultivation. Moreover, everyone experienced a 10-year leap in their cultivation by merely taking those dawn of his. Forget about eating or even seeing such a magical thing. No one has even heard of something like this before. Those dawn have increased our cultivation by 10 years. That's simply against the natural order of things. Could anything be impossible for this mysterious man? Therefore, it was only natural that Long Crane and Big Bear didn't have any misgivings regarding the mysterious person. Moreover, Jun Moxie had never intended to renege on this deal either. This was a chanced-upon opportunity for him, and would be good for him as well. Wouldn't they owe him a big favor if they all managed to advance through their bottlenecks safely? Wouldn't that mean that I would acquire many powerful thugs for free? Moreover, each one of them would be an apex-level warrior. Ah, the young Master Jun felt free of worry and pleasant with that treasure in his hand. His entire journey forward had been pleasant and full of surprises since he had left the Xian Beast Kings. This Tian Fa forest isn't a Fu*King treasure in name only. This has gotten me very excited. I couldn't find any of these ingredients in Tianxiang City. My efforts failed even when I had searched the entire place so painstakingly, and had exerted the entirety of my strength. But I can find everything here en masse. No ingredient is rare here. I can find anything I want as long as I look for it seriously. And they aren't present in a small number either. Their quantity here is huge. And it looks like no one has ever collected any of them. This is great. This is really great. There are so many ingredients for the peak level 9 Xian Dawn. Like tricolored spirit mushroom, heavenly star grass, level 9 Xian root. I've already stumbled upon these 3 herbs. They are few of the rarest herbs of the age, and can't be easily found. In fact, I've actually found some heavenly star grass. This is only second to the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit. And such a legendary grade medicine actually exists here in abundance. This had come as a huge surprise to him. He had seemingly got the cherry pick. Jun Moxie felt warm inside. He continued to use the yin-yang escape as he went deeper into the forest. He saw many rare ingredients, and stored all of them inside the Hongjun Pagoda. But he hadn't gone very far when he started to feel that something was off. This was because there were no traces of any Xian beasts in the area that lay in front of him. There were no birds in the sky. And the ground was so clean that not an ant could be seen crawling on it. What was really unreasonable was that he couldn't even feel half an earthworm inside the ground. This place is too silent and desolate. Don't tell me that there's another 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit here. Jun Moxie looked around at the flowers and trees. They were all lush. He circulated the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune, and breathed the air in. It was fresh, and there was no hint of poison in it. Moreover, there was a spiritual influence at play there. And it was surprisingly in abundance. This area is so vibrant. But why isn't there a single trace of any beast here? This is extremely strange. Jun Moxie carefully drifted forward a bit, and then walked inside. The trees and the flowers got increasingly lush. But there was no sound of activity same as before. The air too got increasingly fresh and pleasant. Jun Moxie finally stopped the yin-yang escape, and showed himself in the woods. He looked around as he walked forward, and then inhaled a lungful of the comfortable air. There were bright purple and red colors all around him. It was late autumn. But everything still seemed very lush in this vicinity. This place was seemingly unaffected by the seasons. The vegetation was still extremely lush. It was extremely quite there. Then, Jun Moxie suddenly felt a subtle sensation. It was like his mind had grown fickle and impatient in this world. Everything had become quiet in the blink of an eye. Everything was so quiet that it made one revel in the past. It made one's mind feel at ease, and made them feel like their souls had been cleansed. The ground Jun Moxie had just stepped on had a silky feel to it, like the grass of a meadow. It rustled softly as he moved forward. He felt like he was walking in dreamland. The myriads of problems that had clogged his mind disappeared, and he felt his mind going empty like he was sleepwalking. Jun Moxie walked as if he was unconscious. He then involuntarily walked over to a lone tree and sat down beneath it. And he did this with extremely gentle movements, as if he was afraid that making any noise would ruin the tranquility of his mind. The young man remained seated very calmly. There was perplexity in his eyes as he brought a hand to his chin while he looked ahead. He couldn't see properly. It seemed as if the area was covered in mist or he was drunk. Hostilities had filled his soul for a long time. But some of it had seemingly started to slip away from his body via a drip. He then had a mysterious feeling. Then he felt disappointment, as if a butcher had laid down his knife. The young master then felt aloof, like he had transformed into a Buddha-like state of mind. A small blossom revolved as it floated down from the tree. It silently fell down on his shoulders, but he didn't become aware of it because of the flurry he was in. There was a light breeze, and the hair at the edge of his hairline started to sway gently. It seemed like centuries had already passed. But it also felt like all of this had happened in a brief moment. The flower bud swiftly falls on the lone man. Jun Moxie sighed slightly and raised his head. He then shaded his eyes to look ahead at the picturesque scenery. He took a deep breath. This is so beautiful that even a blood-soaked killer like me feels elated and detached in its seclusion. Jun Moxie reluctantly looked around at the surroundings. His mind opened up. He chuckled and spoke up in self-mockery. Staying in this serenity for merely one day can be life's greatest pleasure. But such an elegant paradise isn't suitable for a killer like me. His figure then floated up without touching the moist and soft grass underneath. Jun Moxie relished the soft breeze for a bit, and then suddenly rushed forward. There was thick growth of trees ahead. In fact, there was no gap between them. They were maybe hundreds or perhaps thousands of years old from the looks of it. They crowded together with no gap between two trees. In fact, it seemed as if they were growing on the same place. They were seemingly fencing something from the surrounding area, and had effectively formed an enclosure. How can someone reside in such a place? Hitman Jun was curious. But he possessed the caution of an assassin. So he initiated the yin-yang escape, and entered it as light as a feather. My heavens! What a beautiful place! There was a small valley within those closely packed trees. There were no constructions in it, but it still had some natural and muddy hovels within. It seemed as if this place had been made by the heavens. In fact, this place was extremely shocking and amazing. A burst of faint and wonderful scent was coming from flowers hidden at a distance. This scent hit Jun Moxie's nose, and he couldn't help but eagerly stretch his neck to breathe it in. He suddenly felt a burst of extreme comfort, and his spirits rose up. He followed the scent, and hadn't gone far when he saw something. It made him want to shout out, and he eventually had to cover his mouth with his hand. There was a massive and solid tree in front of him. It grew on gravel. However, the gravel was exuding three bright colors: gold, red and white. These three colors glittered so splendidly that they took Jun Moxie's breath away. It appeared that the tricolored mushroom grew there. Moreover, there weren't just 7 or 8 of them under that tree's trunk. Several grew in every nook and cranny. They were practically growing there as if they were cabbage in a farm. And one could also find many other rare herbs there. I'm not dreaming, right? Jun Moxie was suddenly overcome with a great sense of happiness. He had coveted this mushroom for a long time. He could rise to the 3rd level and refine the cleansed marrow dan. He hadn't even found 10 ingredients in Tianxiang City despite his thorough search. But he had collected even higher level ingredients in merely one night's time after he had set foot inside this forest. Moreover, he had collected them en masse. Jun Moxie was very depressed some time ago. He could have made a breakthrough. But he didn't have the medicine which could supplement it. This had given him a huge headache. He had never thought that these things would line up like cabbage in a farm after he'd arrive at Tian Fa. But then, he had found this unfathomable and mysterious place. This is indeed inexplicably amazing. It's unknown how many rare and amazing treasures one could find in this vast Tian Fa forest. This would tantamount to immense strength in the future. Jun Moxie went wild with joy and stepped forward. He then started to pluck those herbs as quickly as he could. The young Master Jun picked a great number of them. But he hesitated once only the last 2 trunks of that tree remained laden with this treasure. And he eventually decided against it. You can't make a living from hunting if you burn the forest. Too much of anything isn't a good thing either. Jun Moxie wouldn't show a moment's hesitation when it came to destroying something right down to its root cause. However, the young Master Jun inadvertently found himself abiding to appropriate behavior inside this heavenly abode. Too much of anything is never a satisfactory thing either. Jun Moxie looked around and was amazed to discover that a natural cultivation base was somewhat concealed in the embrace of that tree. And one could actually find every kind of precious ingredient in the underbrush. Is this the source of that spiritual influence? Jun Moxie felt apprehensive and looked around with greater care. One would find a cave if they took a detour from the trees. But there were trees which leaned forward to cover the entrance of the cave. In fact, he was convinced that even wind and rain wouldn't be able to affect the area inside this cave. This cave must be unusually dry. Then, the young Master Jun heard an extremely faint sound from the mouth of the cave. Don't tell me someone actually lives here. But my spirit sense had detected no abnormality in this area. Jun Moxie suddenly became alert. He quickly initiated the yin-yang escape and floated inside the cave in a state of invisibility. He went forward and took a look inside the cave. His mouth immediately opened around, with astonishment. Something he could have never anticipated had appeared before his eyes. He had thought that this place was extremely secretive. He had anticipated that even a bird wouldn't be able to come here. So, he had naturally assumed that this place would be the abode of some big boss. Or that it was at least an abode of a Xian beast king in human form. Only that kind of talent and strength would deserve such an environment. However, what appeared in front of him was a bare room made up of cold stone. In fact, there wasn't even a bed inside it. It was only worthy of being called a dump. There was a black gown on the center of the floor. It laid there like discarded trash. In fact, it couldn't even be called a black gown from Jun Moxie's standards. That thing was more like a massive piece of black cloth. He felt that even an elephant would look slender in that gown. And, as far as a human was concerned, that cloth would cover any human in their entirety even if the cloth had been folded a few times. The black cloth had a small blood stain on it. It was unknown where it had picked that stain from. A barely alive and tiny white animal was laying on top of that black cloth. Jun Moxie shot a quick glance towards this animal. That animal almost looked like Little White at first sight. However, he looked more carefully, and realized that this little creature wasn't little white. The beast in front of him was half the size of a person's arm. Its body was entirely white, and had no fur anywhere. But that white creature gave off a very comfortable feeling, and looked very elegant as well. The frail thing looked at Jun Moxie as he appeared in front of it. However, its eyes didn't display a single trace of fear. It merely turned to look at him with eyes that were filled with tranquility, clarity, and even an indescribable sense of arrogance. Then, the tiny creature seemed to have resigned to something, and lowered its head. It had suddenly gone so quiet that it seemed as if life and death had no meaning in its eyes anymore. However, that small body was curled up so helplessly in that black gown that the sight of it could evoke a strong feeling of tenderness in one's heart. Jun Moxie held nothing against animals. But his temperament had never been of a man who'd be fond of pets. He didn't exactly like or dislike Little White. But he suddenly felt a strong urge to protect the little creature that lay in front of him. And it was a fantastic feeling. Poor thing. Are you hurt? Jun Moxie asked in a rare gentle voice as he softly sat down while looking at the tiny beast. The little thing lowered its head indifferently. It seemed uninterested. It wasn't clear whether it couldn't understand the words the young Master Jun had spoken or had simply ignored them from the start. Jun Moxie saw this creature's lazy and adorable mannerism, and suddenly recalled why Dugu Xiao Yi had come to Tian Fa. She wanted to hunt a snow ferret. She then wanted to use its skin to make a garment her grandfather could wear on his wounded waist. That small creature looked like the legendary and thunderous Xian beast snow ferret from the looks of it. However, Jun Moxie couldn't detect even the faintest trace of a Xian beast-like aura from it despite a careful inspection. Therefore, it obviously wasn't a level 8 snow ferret or anyone from its genus. In fact, it might not even be a Xian beast to start with. Could it really be an ordinary tiny ferret? But why does it look so beautiful? Then, Jun Moxie slowly extended his hand and touched the little creature lightly. However, the creature still hung its head low, same as before. The creature was motionless, but its body had become stiff. I know you're scared, little thing. Jun Moxie smiled. Don't worry, I'm a good man, a very good man. Come, amusing little thing, I will see to your wound. I will give you a tasty medicine. A good man? This was the first time that Jun Moxie had called himself a good man in the combined time frame of his 2 lives so far. However, he was truly a good man in this little white creature's eyes. He circled his aura around the little creature he now held in his arms, and inspected it for a bit. However, there was something Jun Moxie hadn't come to notice. He had held the creature for barely a second when its ears had become erect. It had then opened its eyes in a wide stare. In fact, a sharp glint had arisen from the depths of its eyes. But it then sensed the wonderful qi that was coming from the young Master Jun's body. It had then stared blankly for a second. In fact, it looked extremely confused at first. But it slowly closed its eyes shut soon after. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 345. Extremely vile. Jun Moxie clicked his tongue. I don't know how you got this injury, little thing. TCH. It's very harsh. Your meridians are like 100-year-old bark. They're brittle and full of cracks. They'll break the moment you make any movements, but you're lucky that you met me. Anyone else's hands would have been bound even if they had wished to help you. However, I seldom turn down the chance to do a good deed. He slowly let out the dense and pure aura he had amassed in his palm while he talked. The refreshing and innate pure aura flowed into the little creature like a bubbling stream. It then went into its meridians. That innate pure aura increased its spirits. And then, the unspeakable pain that it felt was reduced considerably as the aura continued to flow into the meridians. It instead felt incomparably comfortable. In fact, it even wanted to let out a groan. The aura slowly mended the nearly broken meridians. It was akin to a supreme healing medicine at the time. The injuries healed slowly and got a little better. Soon, the meridians were fixed enough to have no cracks left in them. So, how did you suffer such a devil's bite? It's a high-level devil's bite. In fact, it's devil's bite only a person with a chi level of a great master can suffer. Only someone with a huge amount of chi could make this happen. How could a little thing like you make such a big ruckus? Is my guess wrong? Are you the root of these problems? Wouldn't you be some big shot of Tian Fa if that were the case, perhaps even the Lord? Jun Moxie laughed. It seemed funny even as he spoke it. And so, he burst out laughing. The little creature turned to look at him, and its eyes revealed an expression of disdain. You're not convinced, little thing? Wouldn't I be the ultra super master if you were the supreme lord of Tian Fa? I can kill you as I speak since you're in my hand. But I will obviously never harm such an adorable little thing like you. Jun Moxie looked at it, and his expression changed very drastically. He couldn't help but smile as he moved his hand and lightly scratched the little thing's tender nose. A light noise came from the creature's throat, and a look of embarrassment appeared in his eyes. The young master continued to tease the little beast while he healed it. It was unknown how long it continued for. Maybe it was for a short period, or perhaps it continued for a long time. Oh. You're feeling embarrassed, little thing? Jun Moxie used the pure aura from the Hongjun Pagoda, and eventually mended the entirety of the little creature's damaged meridians. He let out a relaxed sigh as he spoke that ridiculous tease of a line. And then, he lightly patted the little thing's tender posterior. The little thing shivered after getting spanked. It was like it had been struck by lightning. It tried to struggle, but Jun Moxie held it down rather vigorously. The injury is fine now. But it'll be best if you don't tamper with it. It might go back to the original injured condition if you do. Jun Moxie spoke as he kneaded the little thing's posterior. He then slapped it lightly only to find that it was extremely soft and supple. It felt as if it had no bone in it. It felt very good to him, and he couldn't help but continue to knead it. Anyway, you can't understand a word I'm saying. A rare and innocent smile surfaced on Jun Moxie's face. He smiled, and his eyebrows shot up. He didn't notice that the eyes of the little creature were full of embarrassment until they had drooped down with shame. Oh. Jun Moxie was too focused at rubbing the little thing since he was enjoying it a bit too much. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. Ah, you seem so embarrassed. You're not a female. Are you? The little creature started to tremble violently. Its eyes opened wide into a circle with disbelief. The little thing then turned as red as blood. Its short and white hair had turned red as well. Then, its body became very stiff. It didn't move at all. A female, you are a female. And I'm a big man. But I won't *PEU. So, what are you afraid of? Jun Moxie was rather engrossed. So, he reached out and teased it further. The little creature then let out a strange scream. It hadn't returned to its state of previous supremacy since it'd need more time to heal completely. But that vile and nasty human before its eyes was making it sick from head to toe. It twitched and shuddered almost as if it was suffering from malaria. Then, it stretched and opened its eyes wide to the greatest extent they could have been stretched to. It then slanted its head at a crooked angle and fainted. Dang! You couldn't endure even that much? I had just touched you lightly, and yet there was such a strong reaction. Was that your weak spot? Jun Moxie spoke in a puzzled manner as he caught hold of the creature's head to inspect it with bewildered expression on his face. And, at this time, Jun Moxie suddenly felt like he was hit by something lofty, powerful and sharp. He was left to shudder due to the icy feeling, and the hair at the back of his neck stood up. He had reacted as such due to a murderous aura that had suddenly overtaken the vicinity. And that murderous aura was extremely formidable. It was the strongest he had felt in both of his lives. He was called the King of Evil in his previous life, but his murderous aura was dwarfed by this cold and murderous one. He had been reduced to a mere nobody expert in front of this aura. In fact, he felt the same way a short grass would in front of a large tree. There was absolutely no comparison between the owners of these two auras. This was a very destructive murderous aura. He didn't even have enough time to pinpoint where the cold murderous aura had come from in that split second. But he felt that he had been enclosed inside it, as if he had fallen into a cold cave. He felt that he couldn't escape it no matter what he did. Jun Moxie was covered with cold sweat for a time. That aura was so sharp, huge, and frightening that it could penetrate into an individual's body, and could lead the said individual's thoughts to become sluggish. So much so that even their very soul would become stiff and sluggish. A person's eyes would see no hope to reprieve themselves from the clutches of death once this murderous aura had shrouded their body. Their eyes would reek of the anticipation of their end. There's such a terrifying and formidable strength in the depths of this forest. Jun Moxie instantly became regretful. I've been too careless this time. Jun Moxie had seen and faced many experts since the time he had come to this world. However, even a spirit Xian expert's murderous aura would be considered nothing compared to what he was facing at this moment. Even the great masterly Zhu Tian wouldn't be able to compare with this. That murderous aura was strong and terrifying enough to have surpassed the young master's imagination. Perhaps this makes sense. This place had so many heavenly herbs. So, it would be illogical to leave these heavenly herbs lying around without a powerful guardian to protect them. Jun Moxie's subconscious screamed for him to escape into the Hongjun Pagoda and take refuge against that frightful aura. He knew that he wouldn't be able to deal with something so frightening and powerful. He wouldn't have been able to escape this aura even if he was at the peak stage of his previous life. So, it was even more useless to talk about his present condition. Jun Moxie couldn't even think of a means to deal with this powerful aura if its owner were to unleash it upon him. What kind of earth-shattering murderous aura is this person emanating? I can neither contend with it nor avoid it. However, the frightening aura disappeared just when Jun Moxie had started to think of making an escape. In fact, that aura had disappeared without a trace or any prior signs of doing so. Its disappearance was an unfathomable mystery. It had disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived. The heavens and earth had now reinstated to their original state. That was close. Jun Moxie gasped for air. But he still had some lingering fear. So, he linked his spiritual sense to the Hongjun Pagoda in order to connect to everything. Then, a mixture of the aura from the Hongjun Pagoda and his own spirit sense spread out far and wide. He looked everywhere, but didn't discover anything unusual. This is very strange. Jun Moxie frowned as he held the little creature. It should be mentioned that Jun Moxie's innate spiritual sense was quite formidable even if his strength wasn't. In fact, it was in no way weaker than that of a spirit Xian expert. Moreover, the aura from Hong Jun Pagoda and his innate spiritual sense had formed a formidable combination. And this had increased the effective power by many times. But the creature in his embrace was a supreme being. It was extremely strong. In fact, it was the strongest the young Master Jun had faced since he had come to this world. And it was the owner of that murderous aura. Jun Moxie's spiritual sense was powerful, but it was incapable of detecting the opposite party's aura if they had chosen to hide it. Jun Moxie had risked a chance, and had started to search for the identity of that mysterious master. But it was a pity that his spiritual sense had come up with nothing. His spiritual sense flowed out again. But he found the area to be deserted once again. There was no one around. He hadn't even noticed that the little thing in his arms had woken up. Its big and beautiful eyes were wide open. But they had a complicated expression in them. The expression in its eyes looked unpredictable in make, but revealed a faint yet fiercely ominous glint. The expressions in its eyes were a blurry mix. It was sometimes indignant, sometimes embarrassed. A murderous look would occasionally arise in them. And it looked puzzled at times. The little thing had revealed many complicated expressions in its eyes. Any man would find this strange. But Jun Moxie hadn't paid any attention to this because of the appearance and disappearance of that unimaginable murderous aura. The young Master Jun had searched every place except for his own arms. That little creature looked like a harmless animal. However, the dark light that shone in its eyes was of a persona Jun Moxie should have feared the most, the undisputed and strongest master. Ha ha! You woke up. You little thing. You woke up. But you didn't even move to let me know about it. You should be spanked for that. Hey, are you hungry? Jun Moxie figured that the master with the murderous aura had disappeared, and wasn't a threat to him for the time being. So he relaxed. Then he became lively, and lowered his head to look at the tiny thing. It was then that he noticed that the little creature had opened his eyes, and was looking at him. The young Master Jun couldn't help but laugh and lightly rebuke as he saw this. The little creature closed its eyes tightly once again. You're still in a bad mood? You're acting like this even though I haven't touched your butt yet? Jun Moxie spoke that sentence with disdain, and then curled his lips. Then, pop! Pop, he hit that little posterior with the palm of his hand. Then he started to knead it, and a look of enjoyment came over his face. This feeling, I really can't get over it. Gee, you come with me, all right, little thing? I will give you tasty food every day. The others can't get the same treatment. I won't even ask for anything. I'll just rub your little buttocks every day. The little creature looked at him with resentment and shame. This man had helped heal its meridians during its frieliest of times. It would have swallowed this shameless guy whole if it weren't for that. What's so valuable about eating and playing with you? What's so special about being with you? What good will you rubbing my butt every day bring? Your words are pure and utter nonsense. It's not untrue that you've helped me today. But you have hit my body and added to my shame as well. You brat. If I don't get back at you 100 times over, then I won't be called. You just wait for it. You still don't want to? How dare you? I've been so kind to you. And you still don't want to come with me? Jun Moxie continued to knead. Then he suddenly thought of something and said, You're a female, right? That means that you will have to breastfeed when you have children, yes? But I can't see the equipment. Is it because they are too small? You think my eyes aren't sharp enough? Why haven't I found anything? The little creature quickly understood what was being said. It quickly opened its eyes wide to look at the hateful brat as it turned its slender body around. Then, it repositioned its body with its slender stomach facing upwards as if it was showing something. TCH. What you have is so small. It's as big as a mung bean. Your children will have to endure terrible hunger. Jun Moxie smiled wickedly as he located his next target. He then extended his finger and pinched it. He then rubbed and pinched it again. The tiny creature's legs suddenly paddled and kicked. Then, it went red all over and started to glare. After that, it let out a weeping groan in a strange voice. Then, it tilted its head and fainted once again. It had been made to faint out of anger and embarrassment twice by now. That other person was too big a bully. The tiny creature found itself being carried in the man's hand by the time it woke up. In fact, it was being swung rather awkwardly in midair. Jun Moxie was in a rush at the moment since he felt the onset of a urinary urgency. However, he didn't wish to put the little thing down since holding it felt extremely comfortable and wonderful. Moreover, that little things might slip away if he put it down. So, he carried the little thing and went out to look for a corner to ease his bladder. The young man raised his gown, undid the trousers, and let them slip a bit. He lowered his underpants down to his feet and revealed two somewhat hairy thighs. After that, the genitalia came out coincidentally in front of the little creature's eyes. He didn't have any scruples doing it in front of the little creature anyway. Don't people urinate in front of their pet dogs as well? Therefore, Jun Moxie didn't think much about it. Then, the bright and shiny line of water burst out with a crashing sound. It burst out joyously and noisily. And the young man felt extremely relaxed as a result of this. The little creature being carried in this youngster's hand could never have imagined that this man would shamelessly undo his trousers. The creature gave an embarrassed whimper and covered its beautiful big eyes with its paws. Jun Moxie saw that reaction and laughed in a savage manner. He finished his business and shook his thing. But he didn't tighten his belt. He started acting in an even viler manner thereafter, and he pulled apart the little thing's paws with his hands. The little thing's eyes were forced open, and that huge thing appeared in front of it once again. In fact, that thing was so close to it that it nearly came close enough to touch it. The little creature screeched like a bird as its entire body turned red. And it shut its eyes close. Its two paws stretched forward despite everything. And they moved forward with the intent to tear the young master's thing to shreds. Jun Moxie shouted, and quickly raised the little creature upwards with a whooshing sound. Then, he again brought his thing close to its head in mischief once it had opened its eyes, and spoke with a sense of disdain in his tone. See this? Feeling inferior? He. The tiny thing had grief and indignation written all over its face. It looked at Jun Moxie with shame in its eyes. And tears had started to stream down from its eyes. It was in so much pain that it didn't wish to live anymore. It was felt horrible, and it felt like its mind had gone blank. This is so shameful, boo-hoo, please let me die, I don't want to live anymore. The young master had acted in a very tyrannical manner. He hummed and pulled up his trousers. But the little creature continued to struggle in his hands. So, he threatened, stop this, or I'll stuff you down my trousers. Stuff me down the trousers? The little thing instantaneously became rigid as it heard him. It didn't even dare to move. I might commit suicide out of shame if he stuffs me down his trousers, but I would still be regarded as a joke for 10,000 years to come. Just look at this guy. He has acted so shamelessly. What else won't he do at this point? This is the most humiliating day of my entire life. This little brat is vile to an unspeakable degree. He's extremely evil and shameless. Jun Moxie put the little creature on a rock in the stone chamber and scolded the wide-eyed victim. You stay here, okay? I'll be going out to get some herbs. But I will be back to take you. Then, we'll leave. He turned around after he had said this and walked towards the cave's mouth. But then, he returned the next moment with a whooshing sound and grabbed the little creature. He then rubbed and spanked its butts a few more times as he laughed. This is really nice. I'm addicted to it. Don't run. Now. Then, he turned and left. Don't run. You'll ravage me when you get back. The little creature glared at Jun Moxie's back with pure hatred as he walked out. Shameless bastard. I'm sure that you're the one who stole my Tian's sacred fruit. And now you've come here to humiliate me. This bastard's help was great for me. But I will never let you off in any way. I will make you weep a tearless cry one day just like I did today. And then, you won't wish to live anymore. You'd want to die, but I won't let you. First, I'll fry your thing. And then, I'm going to sever it for scaring me like that. The little thing cried many wrong tears. It then turned around and returned to the stone room. Then, it activated some unknown mechanism that was concealed inside the room and disappeared. It has been hundreds of years since I've been born and I had forgotten what it felt like to cry. But I've cried so many tears of humiliation today, I just can't bear this. It won't take me more than a day to make a full recovery. This speed of recovery has been made possible because of this brat's help, but I must take revenge. I remember your smell. I remember your face. Don't worry, I'll find you. I'll rat you out no matter where you run to inside this continent. A person who can escape my wrath hasn't appeared in this continent in hundreds of years. You repulsive brat. You shameless piece of sh*t. Remember me, bastard. Jun Moxie eventually finished collecting enough ingredients. In fact, he had nearly wiped the area clean. He was in a happy and satisfied mood, like he was returning from a rewarding journey. He was extremely content with his achievements and felt relaxed. But he was then suddenly blindsided the moment he returned to the stone chamber. The black gown was still there inside the stone chamber. But the adorable little creature wasn't. It had disappeared without a trace. Crap. Where has that little thing run off to? How come it has run away when I told it not to? Jun Moxie felt a rare sense of indignation. I had cured your injuries and had given you so much fun. Yet, you forgot what you owed me and escaped. You're a thankless thing. The young Master Jun was unwilling to give up. He carefully searched inside a circumference to see where that ungrateful creature had run off to. I'll see that I never need your tiny ass again once I find you. Jun Moxie took a hateful pledge. He was feeling very indignant. He wanted to take that little back with him so he could tease it regularly. Moreover, he wanted to take that incredibly tiny and adorable creature to his house so that it might also keep Guan Qinghan happy. However, those back and forth thoughts were of a man who had counted his chickens before they had hatched. This had turned into a fruitless endeavor. Don't get too cocky. Just you wait. You'll be wiping my ass the next time we meet. I'll teach you a lesson. Jun Moxie cursed inside. But he also thought of the Hongjun Pagoda. He thought of an entire layer filled with the legendary treasures he had collected. This made him very happy. This trip to Tian had been an enriching and profitable endeavor. In fact, the profits had far surpassed his imagination. It had been a bumper harvest. Jun Moxie was satisfied. He sighed, and his body suddenly got up into the air before he vanished. He had already initiated the yin-yang escape, and was moving unseen through the forest towards his destination, the Southern Heaven City. Only one important ingredient is left: the level 9 Xian root. Grandpa Jun's cultivation would be advanced to Spirit Xian realm once the level 9 Xian root had been acquired. In fact, it would go beyond the mere Spirit Xian realm. He would be at Spirit Xian's second level's peak in one enthralling step. Grandpa's cultivation is lacking in relation to the world at large. But it's one of the top ones in Tianxiang City, perhaps even the whole of the empire. Tianxiang's emperor could think of dealing with the Jun family despite its military prowess, but he wouldn't think about messing with a Spirit Xian expert without fearing of the consequences. No one can bear such consequences with ease. Even the emperor of a country is no exception. A Spirit Xian expert as an enemy can tantamount an ocean of corpses and blood. Then, Jun Moxie settled his heart and concentrated on dealing with his third uncle's situation. The Silver Blizzard City, he couldn't take out the entire Xia family for the time being. But he still had to make his uncle and Han Yenya meet. This was the greatest worry that had plagued his uncle's heart. This was also Han Yenyao's greatest hope. And Jun Moxie had taken it upon himself to help the two. Jun Moxie returned to the Southern Heaven City the next day. But it was already night time. In other words, he had already spent a full day and night in the forest. Where had you gone to, you brat? What took you so long to return? Jun Moxie ran into Jun Wuyi's question the moment he returned. His 3 Spirit Xian maternal uncles were staring at him. And one could tell from their eyes that were ready to give him a beating. The 3 men had their hair turn white with worry for their precious nephew since the youngster had gone missing for a day and night. Moreover, this was the Shui Han Manor's territory. So, Jun Wuyi and the 3 Dongfang brothers would have rushed to either Shui Han Manor or the Silver Blizzard City to look for Jun Moxie if he hadn't returned in some time. Well, I had just gone for a casual stroll. And I hadn't gone very far. Jun Moxie turned his gaze from his 4 uncles, slipped away into the shadows, and disappeared without a trace. I can only tell you that I went for a stroll into the forest yesterday. What a joke. I had a very cheerful and friendly chat with 7 Xian Beast King. And I've come to a mutual agreement with them. We have unanimously reached a mutually beneficial agreement to cooperate. The 4 men looked at each other. You went for a stroll? You brat. This is your first time in this city. You're a stranger here. So, where did you go for a stroll? And can one go for a stroll that lasts for a day and a night? You didn't go far. You could have gone far enough to visit Tianxiang City by now. You brat. Don't you know that we 4 brothers were worried to death? However, Jun Moxie had returned and didn't wish to discuss his whereabouts. In any case, he had returned safe and sound. So, the 4 elder men were in no mood to inquire further. Moreover, Jun Wuyi was aware that his nephew possessed special powers, and not only in name at that. They were presently in Southern Heaven City. But he wouldn't have been too worried if his nephew had gone missing for 2 to 3 days in Tianxiang City. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 346. Li Tengyun's Persecution. Well, I had just gone for a casual stroll. And I hadn't gone very far. Jun Moxie turned his gaze from his 4 uncles, slipped away into the shadows, and disappeared without a trace. I can only tell you that I went for a stroll into the forest yesterday. What a joke! I had a very cheerful and friendly chat with 7 Xian Beast King. And I've come to a mutual agreement with them. We have unanimously reached a mutually beneficial agreement to cooperate. The 4 men looked at each other. You went for a stroll? You brat. This is your first time in this city. You're a stranger here. So, where did you go for a stroll? And, can one go for a stroll that lasts for a day and a night? You didn't go far. You could have gone far enough to visit Tianxiang City by now. You brat. Don't you know that we 4 brothers were worried to death? However, Jun Moxie had returned, and didn't wish to discuss his whereabouts. In any case, he had returned safe and sound. So, the 4 elder men were in no mood to inquire further. Moreover, Jun Xie was aware that his nephew possessed special powers, and not only in name at that. They were presently in southern Heaven City. But he wouldn't have been too worried if his nephew had gone missing for 2 to 3 days in Tianxiang City. However, the 4 men genuinely hadn't realized that Jun Moxie hadn't gone very far. He had only gone to the core of the Tian Fa forest for a stroll. And that stroll had materialized into the collection of some precious herbs, the molestation of a little creature, and what not. The expressions of the 4 men changed. They shook their head and followed in. The 4 had been worried this entire time. But their hearts were at ease now. The battle would start the next day. So, everyone's mind was preoccupied with it. They had decided to take a quick rest. The next day was to be a serious one. It was at this moment that a soldier suddenly came with a message. Shui Han Manor's Li Tengyun had come to pay a visit. Jun Xie then muttered irresolutely, "Invite him in." The 3rd Master Jun had been thinking about the meeting of the heads of the families. It had taken place in the morning, and Jun Xie had been designated the supreme commander for the decisive battle. That is, he had been chosen as the leader of the team that would throw their lives away. However, the Shui Han Manor had then proposed their 3rd master as a candidate to replace Jun Xie for the supreme commander's position, that too at a point when the heads of every family had nearly reached the conclusion of the matter. This had left everyone baffled. The so-called supreme commander would have no real authority. He would have no hope for a victory in this battle. In fact, the commander would be a scapegoat in defeat, and would only go out to die in this hopeless battle. Moreover, the said man would also have to protect his own side from the animosity-ridden plots of his opposing factions. Hence, this was truly an arduous and thankless job. Therefore, no one could understand what Li Ju Tian was thinking. Why would he send the 3rd master from his family, someone with a spirit Xian cultivation, to be a replacement scapegoat for the number 1 contender Jun Xie? Wouldn't it be too great a pity? However, this suggestion had come from the top expert of the coalition. So, no one dared to overrule it that lightly. Therefore, the position of the supreme commander had been temporarily shelved. But the selection of the commander would only be done amidst 2 people, that unfortunate 3rd master of the Shui Han Manor, and Jun Xie. And Li Tengyun had presumably showed up to discuss that matter. The powerful families had also decided to send some powerful experts to the battle in the pre-preparatory meeting for the battle. The co-originators of this evil plot, the Shui Han Manor and the Silver Blizzard City, didn't dare to differ from this idea either. This entire plan to push Jun Xie into a desperate situation was theirs from the beginning. After all, they were the ones who wanted to push him into this pit of fire. So, wouldn't the entire world sneer at them if no one was sent from their side? Everyone knew that the chances of victory were quite slim in this battle. In fact, they had almost no chances. However, they still had to send someone even if they were sending the said individuals to their deaths. Jun Moxie and the Dongfang family would go in. So, the Duanmu and the Sikong family would run the bank to mediate. The Silver Blizzard City decided to send 3 of their elders, the 3rd, 6th, and 9th. The 2 Sky Xian experts Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han would also accompany them along with the 7 swords of the Silver Blizzard City. This was nearly 70% of the full strength that had arrived here from the Silver City. In fact, their contribution had been nothing less than generous on the face of it. After all, sending the 3 elders wouldn't be sufficient in its own. The 7 swords were Silver Blizzard City's greatest force, but their power would be reduced rather considerably if they weren't together. So, they'd all have to go. Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han were the 2 unlucky ones. Several peak experts had gathered here. So, 2 Sky Xian experts weren't considered much in this context. However, this was also one of Silver Blizzard City's schemes. Sending great manpower would mean that they would be safer since they could all look out for each other. Therefore, they wouldn't be likely to meet with their deaths even if they suffered a defeat in the battle. And the Silver City wouldn't suffer too much as a result of this. However, going with less manpower could mean throwing the lives away of those who were sent to battle. As for the remaining experts of the Silver Blizzard City, the 2nd, 5th, and the 8th elders, they wouldn't be going. There was a feud between Xiao Buyu and the Dongfang family. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't join the rest. It would be extremely misfortunate if an internal conflict were to arise due to his presence. Xiao Buyu was Silver City's lead on this assignment. And it was rather mature of him to make this decision when one comes to think of it. There were certainly many grudges and resentments between them and the Dongfang family. However, the current crisis could mean that humanity's end was looming close. So, it was important to act against opening old quarrels given the current scenario. The Duanmu and the Sikong family had friendly relations with the 3 Dongfang brothers. So, they invariably stood on the Jun family's side when they saw Dongfang Wenqing stand beside them. Shuihun Manor also decided to dispatch a massive force. In fact, they had dispatched over half their manpower. This included 300 Jade Xian experts, 100 Earth Xian experts, 30 Sky Xian experts, and 5 Spirit Xian experts. The Shuihun Manor's team was the strongest amongst the gathered forces. The weakest contingent hailed from the Bailey family. They had decided to dispatch 2 Sky Xian experts along with the Jade Xian Bailey Luoyun. This decision made the other families sigh in the secrecy of their hearts. And this also made everyone look down on them somewhat. It's too short-sighted of the Bailey family to treat such a young genius like this. No matter what level of hatred or enmities may have driven this family against this unique genius, they should have rather expelled Bailey Luoyun from the family as the most severe punishment instead of doing this. Bailey Luoyun might even become a loner in society at large if they had expelled him. But he would still have his family name, Bailey. He would then remain a member of the Bailey family in the eyes of society. Moreover, he would have become a Spirit Xian expert or maybe even a great master if they had given him a dozen or so years to train. Bailey Luoyun could have become the patron of the Bailey family then. Resentment may still have remained between Bailey Luoyun and the Bailey family in that case. But any person wishing to mess with the Bailey family would still have to think about Bailey Luoyun's reaction. He would at least be a virtual threat. And the unnoticeable Bailey family would have then been able to change the tide, and would have risen in the society when that time came. However, the Bailey family simply couldn't wait to get rid of this person. In fact, they were almost impatient to bring that rare genius to death. This left everyone to look at the Bailey family's decision-making abilities with disdain. You're a powerful family. So, how can you not read the situation? How can you be so short-sighted? What will you gain by this? Some people even started to assert that the Bailey family had started to decline and was even done for. Jun Xie, the supreme commander who had led 20,000 men to the southern Heaven City, would only lead around 300 men of his own to this battle. And 200 of these men were Jade Xian experts. The remaining were mostly at the Earth Xian realm. In fact, most of the assembled experts were the ones who had been sent by Tian Xiang's influential families to protect their young masters. Jun Xie had clearly understood the emperor's intentions in the manner he had singled out these people. The many young masters of the various families will be well protected and won't face a mishap. But my life is surely foreordained for doom. The families of the capital city were quite scattered. And he probably desired to use this time to reorganize them. Their strength wasn't exactly that great when compared to the rest of the world. Yet, they were considered quite powerful inside the city. After all, even monkeys can become the kings when there are no tigers in the mountains. However, the family's powers would be crippled if a majority of these men died here. And these men were accompanying the precious treasures of each family. So, they would certainly be left to feel indignant if too many of these bodyguards were to die. Moreover, these young masters would return home to their siblings later. They would then notice that everything would be settled and calm. This would drive them mad. And everything would then change, whether it would be a gripe for power or schemes for toppling the family's line of succession. And this would eventually weaken every major family. This step-by-step degradation scheme's genius had to be attributed to the emperor. He would be able to hold the powerful families together in his hands in this manner. There could have come a time when the heads of the powerful families may have united to take a stand against the emperor. But that scenario would vanish in thin air as a result of this scheme. This was a great and far-reaching scheme. In fact, it was an excellent and exquisite plan. The emperor's far-sighted plan was already at play at that time. The third master Jun was immersed in these thoughts when Li Tengyun walked in his excessively jingly attire. His clothes were decorated with flowers and gave off a shiny bright radiance. In fact, he looked like a walking lighthouse. Jun Xie and the three Dongfang brothers were flabbergasted. This brat is too coquettish. He would be a live target for any assassin. The said killer could make it work even if he had bad aim. He would only need to throw his weapon at the shiny light, and that alone would be enough to make his target gurgle blood. Li Tengyun entered with 2 experts in tow. He cupped his hands and looked rather arrogant as he said, "I've come to pay a visit, Commander Jun. I request the commander doesn't mind this intrusion. The young master is too courteous." Jun Xie remained calm and maintained etiquette. "Yet, I don't know why you've come here. To what do I owe this meet?" Li Tengyun chuckled gently. He then looked around. The young man was about to speak up, but he stopped himself. The 3 Dongfang brothers smiled. They were aware that he had some apprehensions. So, they excused themselves and retired. But Jun Moxie walked in from behind the cloth flap just as his 3 uncles left. However, the shadows of 2 other people remained hidden behind the flap. These 2 individuals were Guan Qinghan and Dugu Xiaoyi. Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan had suspected the reason behind Li Tengyun's visit. And hence, they had walked in advance. Dugu Xiaoyi had naturally followed after them. Everyone present here is family. So, the young master Li Tengyun can speak freely. Jun Xie smiled faintly. The faint yet cold glint in Li Tengyun's eyes had somewhat revealed his intentions. And Jun Xie was no fool. So, he had guessed the reason behind Li Tengyun's visit. This young master will speak openly if that's the case. Li Tengyun smiled. His eyes had a look of great confidence in them. The just-arrived Jun Moxie wasn't important in his eyes. In fact, he wouldn't even care if the entire Jun family were present there. After all, the Jun family was nothing in front of the monster that his Shui Han manor was. This young master had gone to Tianxiang City for sightseeing some time ago. He had then met young Lady Guan Qing Han by chance, and was startled by her celestial beauty. I've been yearning for her day and night ever since. Not a day goes by when I don't think of her. Li Tengyun smiled gracefully and continued. It's said that the young Lady Guan Qing Han has been living as a widow in the Jun family for many years. In fact, her status is still that of the Jun family's daughter-in-law married to the eldest of the Jun family's third generation but we all know that the said marriage isn't valid. In fact, it's a marriage in name only. So, this young master has come to the third master Jun to ask for the young lady's freedom so that we can have a splendid marriage. Wouldn't it be the best for both the sides? My Shui Han manor will also reciprocate if you agree and give your well wishes. Li Tengyun waved his hand to stop Jun Xie from interrupting as he continued. The third master Jun must be aware that my Shui Han manor has agreed to my proposition for candidature over the command of the forces for the decisive battle tomorrow. Everyone knows that this decisive battle is no ordinary battle. You'd have to face high-level Xian beasts. A single misstep could result in a miserable fate if one's not careful. Commander Jun is a great general. Your Xian cultivation is he is obviously outstanding as well. This Li Tengyun genuinely admires that about you. However, Commander Jun has been disabled for several years. We may have to square up against the high-level Xian beasts in this battle. And you must know that you won't be very fortunate if you were to go there. Jun Xie looked down. He didn't wish to show his rage. Then, he spoke in a lowered voice. The manor's young master's purpose to arrive here certainly isn't limited to a chat about his worry for this Jun's life. Speak your real intention. Well, I shall talk plainly since the Commander Jun is in haste. You won't need to throw your life away if you agree to my request. Li Tengyun seemed tired, and put up his point rather directly. Our Shui Han manor will take a strong stance, and we will forcibly take the position of the supreme commander. We won't let any harm come to the Jun family's reputation. The Jun family will be safe from the Xian beast's attack under our wing. Moreover, we will also try our best to mediate with the Silver City in order to prevent them from stabbing you in the back. Li Tengyun's eyes had basically turned into slits by now. His expression changed as he spoke. And this young master knows of the Jun family's apprehensions. But we won't create any problems for Commander Jun. And the Jun family only has to part with one woman in exchange. Moreover, they shall only be parting with a woman they have no relations with. Is that what the young masterly means? That this woman has no worth? Jun Moxie suddenly spoke up in between. This one woman the third young master's words aren't in keeping with his family's identity. And this is very surprising to me. Li Tengyun looked up coldly as he said, how much value do women have in this world? They eventually rely on the husband's merit even if they accomplish something. It's like our families exchange mates for our horses. Or dogs. Or a few women. That isn't usually a big deal. Right? They are mere toys. Nothing more. There's no need to make a fuss about it. Mere toys? Jun Xie's voice was cold. In fact, It was as cold as the winds that blow on a snow-capped mountain. Is this your condition, young Masterly? I'm making a great offer in good faith. And the commander is still unsatisfied? Li Tengyun had recognized the coldness in Jun Wuyi's voice. He had also noticed the menacing glint in Jun Wuyi's eyes. And the threatening texture of his tone. Think properly, Commander Jun. You will probably die tomorrow if you refuse this gesture I've made with goodwill. You will have to face those crazy beasts that are anyway unmatchable foes. Moreover, you will also have to contend with others whom you can't hope to match. A mere woman in exchange for your life and the peace of the entire Jun family. I'm sure that one who understands this situation will know what choice to make. Moreover, this arrangement will bring the said woman great happiness. You're faced with two roads that determine life and death. Commander. Will you choose unwisely? No relation. Guan Qinghan is a part of my family. At least for now she is. Jun Wuyi looked at him coldly. No outsider shall ever be allowed to disgrace someone once they're a part of the Jun family. The young master needn't worry about the life and death of any from the Jun family's members since you're merely a visitor. Don't refuse. Jun Wuyi. This young master has come to speak to you in this matter. But he has only done so for the benefit of your reputation. Moreover, he has provided such great conditions for your sake. Do you genuinely think you're someone that great? Li Tengyun stood up and continued in a ruthless tone. Why should I worry about you if you can't tell the good from the bad and wish to court death? You will anyway die. So, what's the big deal? You anyway can't stop me from getting Guan Qinghan even if you don't. Jun Moxie clicked his tongue and said, Young Master Li is very strange. When has our Jun family ever asked you to worry about us? And what status do you have of your own? You're merely the only son of great Master Zhu Tian. That's all. The young master of the magnificent Shui Han Manor. That's all. But where's the virtue in that? This has indeed widened my outlook. No wonder my sister-in-law doesn't like you. In fact, I'm convinced that no woman will ever like you. And that's because you don't have a single good thing about you except for the fact that you are the son of the reputed second great master. The Shui Han Manor has no future. Very well. You will pay for your words. Jun Moxie. Just you wait for your uncle's corpse tomorrow. Li Tengyun snorted, flicked his sleeves, and said, This young master disdains the quarrel you've started. Jun Moxie. Your Jun family isn't even fit to haggle with me. Jun Moxie sneered. It's difficult to tell who isn't a fit here. I can only see a toad who's trying to eat a swan's meat standing in front of me. What about you? You. Li Tengyun became extremely mad at first. He then suppressed his anger and coldly stated, I Li Tengyun desire a woman. And yet, I can't have her. Jun Moxie. You're in the southern heaven city. I'd like to see you act like this once you have lost your third uncle and the protection of your three maternal uncles. Tomorrow, it'll be your third uncle. Perhaps, it'll be you the day after. Your three spirit Xian expert uncles are great, right? Jun Moxie. The power you rely on is nothing in my eyes. Let me tell you, a clenched fist is the greatest argument in this world. I know that the clenched fist is the greatest argument. The Shui Han Manor would have easily defeated the Xian beasts if it weren't for their power, right? So, I guess the fist wasn't big enough. And the great master Zhu Tian was forced to issue the supreme order over this, right? But you're still so arrogant and shameless despite all this. Jun Moxie then shook his head in a dumbfounded manner. The Xue Han Manor is genuinely a lame duck. I guess we will have to wait to see the manor's funeral day after tomorrow. Well, we'll see whose family will have to wait at the funeral. Jun Moxie. You'll be the one to wear the mourning clothes. You brat. Li Tengyun then turned around and started to walk out. He reached the exit. Then, he suddenly stopped, turned, and asked, "You're sure that you won't regret this? Jun Wuyi?" "Get lost." That was Jun Wuyi's answer. That shameless young master of the Xue Han Manor had crossed the limit of his tolerance. A sharp light flashed in Li Tengyun's eyes as he snorted and turned away. "Wait, young Master Tengyun!" Jun Moxie shouted for Li Tengyun. Li Tengyun turned his head and snorted. "So, you're scared now? Young Master Jun, hurry up and tell your third uncle and grandfather that there's no need to put the Jun family in trouble because of a single woman. A wise man submits to the circumstances." Ah. Young Master Tengyun misunderstands young Master Jun's reason behind asking him to stop. "I just intend to remind young Master Tengyun of something in the best of interests. Your eyes reveal the oncoming of misfortune. Your left eye is green with youth, but your right one is green with envy. Your face also beckons an oncoming disaster. It's a bloody disaster that will befall in the days to come. But you can't even run from it. Therefore, you mustn't worry about other people's life and death. You must rather concern yourself with your own safety. I'm only trying to say that it would be very bad if the father has to watch his son die before his own doom strikes him." Then, the young Master Jun slowly said, "Great Master Zhu Tian is way over 100 years old. I fear his reproductive capabilities won't work anymore. So take good care of yourself, young master." Li Tengyun's nose was almost crooked with anger. He turned his head and didn't look back as he left. "Are our troops ready for tomorrow's fight, third uncle?" Jun Moxie asked. "Every expert from each family has been selected and readied, except for me. Our Tianxiang Empire's military strength is the crown of the entire continent. But it is considered the weakest in terms of strength amongst those who have gathered here. And everyone knows this fact. Moreover, I haven't deployed your 250 guards. Or the high-ranking generals." Jun Wuyi smiled faintly. "What's the need to sacrifice so much in a lost battle, right?" Jun Wuyi hadn't explained those words, but Jun Moxie had understood them rather clearly. Those 250 guards would continue to live, and would become the Jun family's future since Commander Jun would most certainly die. My death alone should be enough. Why should these men die as well? Jun Moxie's heart was moved by this. Jun Wuyi didn't know that the Jun family wouldn't be touched during the battle the following day. So, he was stubbornly determined to sacrifice his life. He wasn't thinking of himself but of the Jun family even at this juncture. "Third uncle," Jun Moxie muttered irresolutely. Then, he spoke up in a resolute manner. "Nothing can be taken for granted. The outcome of tomorrow's battle is uncertain. But nothing will happen to you even if we suffer huge damages. This I assure you." Jun Wuyi looked at him for a good while before he suddenly smiled and said, "I hope so." He then suddenly called out after having said that, "Can you come out, Qing Han? Haven't you eavesdropped enough? Come out." Guan Qing Han and Dugu Xiao Yi came out with embarrassed expressions. They looked at Jun Wuyi. And their expressions changed to that of extreme worry. Especially Guan Qing Han. She was distressed. Jun Wuyi coughed, and then became silent. He had conflicting expressions on his face for some time, and remained silent. Then, he finally spoke up in a hoarse voice. There are 3 individuals in front of me today. One is my nephew, and one is the Jun family's daughter-in-law. And then, there's another person, the Dugu family's treasured daughter Dugu Xiaoyi. You represent the Dugu family. You will be troubled because I Jun Wu-yi will make you a witness today. Dugu Xiaoyi didn't know what he was about to speak. Jun Wu-yi was apparently about to make a serious decision. So, she subconsciously nodded. Guan Qinghan guessed what Jun Wu-yi was about to do. So, she cried out in sadness, "Third uncle, don't do it." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 347. This thought shall remain immortal in the realm of this world. Jun Wu-yi sighed and smiled. Then, he started to shake his head in an exceptionally firmly manner. He then took out a copper token from his bosom. The gems studded on its surface glittered under the moonlight, and revealed the word Jun. And the word order was written on the back of the token in accordance to the strict parlance of the era. It was the order token of the master of the Jun family. This has been handed down from generation to generation. Xie, your grandfather had handed me this token 3 months ago. And I Jun Wu-yi have been the current head of the Jun family since then. Whatever decisions I take with this are the decisions of the Jun family. No member of the Jun family can violate my orders. Do you understand? Jun Wu-yi finished speaking those heavy words. He then raised the token and spoke with a cold expression. Jun family's 3rd-generation daughter-in-law. Kneel and heed. Guan Qinghan was a bit frightened as she looked at the 3rd Master Jun. His cold expression allowed no room for negotiation. So, she had no choice but to sigh, take a step forward, and kneel in front of Jun Wu-yi. The daughter-in-law is warm and virtuous. Her mannerism and accomplishments are of the highest degree even though she's only 20. The parents of the senior generation had talked of making a match in the past, and had then settled on a marriage. The Jun family's cherished eldest son of the 3rd generation couldn't consummate the marriage since he unexpectedly died in battle. And Guan Qinghan has vigorously spent her youth guarding her pure body for the past 5 years. She has suffered bitter hardships with the intention to preserve the friendships between the 2 families this entire duration of time. But my Jun family can't extend this fallen marriage forever. You were considered as married without an actual marriage. You are married yet not married. Moreover, you've been living as a widow. So today, I Jun Wu-yi, the master of the Jun household, grant Guan Qinghan her freedom by the power vested to me by this token of authority. We will no longer have anything to do with any wedding you may celebrate. Dugu family's Dugu Xiaoyi and Jun family's young master Jun Moxie have borne witness to this. The heavens and the earth have borne witness to this. Guan Qinghan had already known what he was about to say. But then, she heard those words come from his mouth and they came without any hesitation. She heard the words in succession, and her heart ached. Her tears fell like the rain. Dugu Xiaoyi was standing beside her. The little girl's pretty mouth was opened wide. She hadn't expected to be a witness to such a great event. Jun Wu-yi finished speaking. His face was cold as he turned to Jun Moxie and called out, "Jun family's 3rd generation's 3rd descendant Jun Moxie. Step forward and kneel." Jun Moxie jumped with a scare. "What is it, 3rd uncle?" Jun family's 3rd generation's 3rd descendant Jun Moxie. Step forward and kneel. Jun Wu-yi repeated sternly. Jun Moxie muttered to himself a couple of times. He had no choice but to reluctantly kneel in such a situation. He felt dispirited. Jun family's third generation's third descendant Jun Moxie. You are tough, open-minded, and capable of bearing great responsibility. I Jun Xie cede my position as the Jun family's head to you. Let the heaven and earth bear witness to this. Jun Moxie had vaguely guessed this outcome. But he still jumped in a startled when he heard the order. His hands shook as he stood up. Don't do this, third uncle. You're still robust. And at the spring of your life. You are still in the prime of your life. So, there's no need to pass it on to me. I don't wish to be the head of the family. Impudence. Jun Xie glared and scolded. Any Jun family descendant refusing to follow the orders of the Jun family's head is considered insubordinate. Are you still going to do it? Jun Moxie? Jun Moxie blinked. He had no way out. He reluctantly took on the responsibility and said, I know you're worried about tomorrow's battle, third uncle. So much so that you've even steeled yourself for death. But I've told you that I won't take that order. I'll only perform this duty for the time being. The title of the head of the house will revert to you if you come back safe and sound. Jun Xie smiled faintly and replied, I'll leave that to you. Jun Moxie had spoken the truth. Jun Xie was expecting his death in the next day's battle. In fact, he didn't even have the slightest hope of surviving it. And that worry had incited him to take that decision this evening. Therefore, he had decided to resolve those two issues. Then, Jun Moxie took a solemn vow and made that guarantee. Jun Xie regarded his nephew's words as those of comfort. How could he take them to be anything else? He expected the other Xian experts to fly off to the fight like a swarm of bees. This would leave him, the commander-in-chief, alone in the open. In fact, they'd probably ignore his fate in the frenzy of this battle. The countless powerful Xian beasts would surely charge and shred him to pieces in this situation. Furthermore, it was to be expected that the Shui Han Manor and the Silver Blizzard City's experts would try something underhanded in the confusion of the melee. So, he would effectively have to face aggression from his enemies and his presumed allies alike. And he would have to do so with his Sky Xian cultivation. Even a Spirit Xian expert wouldn't be able to return alive if he were to face such a situation alone. Moxie. It'll be great if I can return safe and sound tomorrow. But the Jun family will rely on you if I die due to some misfortune. Jun Xie spoke in a tranquil manner. Your grandfather is very old now. So, you'll have to look after him. Moreover, we have negated Guan Qing Han's marriage. But she's our family's daughter-in-law. No one shall be allowed to bully her, no matter how much time passes. It won't be a big deal if anyone who does so dies for it. Yes, I'll never forget it. Jun Xie let out a long sigh. Then, he looked distant and very sentimental as he spoke. In fact, it seemed as if he was talking in his sleep. Also, I have another thing to entrust you with. It is very important. If you ever go to the Silver Blizzard City and meet her, tell her these words I speak. Jun Xie suddenly stopped talking. Jun Moxie listened to his uncle calmly and didn't ask any questions. He knew who that her Jun Xie was referring to was. It was that pitiful woman who resided in the snowy peaks. The one who was suffering bitter hardships for his love. She was also the cause of the entirety of these calamities, Han Yanyao. However, the matter with Han Yanyao was quite complicated in Jun Moxie's mind. This was because no tragedy would have occurred if it weren't for her. You were the young lady of the Silver Blizzard City. Why did you go out to the secular world to amuse yourself? Why was there a need to lead my uncle on? Didn't you know that your marriage had been set since your childhood days? Xiao Han's methods of handling things are extremely wretched. But, thinking from his point of view, which man would willingly allow himself to be cuckolded? What kind of a man would sit idly if his fiancée of 10 years wanted to run away with an unfamiliar man? This matter would be unbearable for any man. Who wouldn't go mad because of it? However, Jun Moxie also knew that no one could give a sermon on love. It was an unreasonable emotion. It could turn the wisest of men into fools if they were struck by it. Even two people who would stay guarded and restrained would form an intimate relationship. And who could say why such a thing happens? What could he say about love? He could see that Jun Wuyi and Han Yanyao had been suffering for 10 years. And yet, they still held their silly love through those bitter hardships even if they lived far apart. Couldn't something like this move an individual whose heart was made of stone? Jun Moxie knew that there was a storm raging in his third uncle's heart with regards to that matter. And that vivid experience was making him go through an emotional roller coaster at the time. The words that he was about to give him for Han Yanya were perhaps what Jun Wuyi had felt for her over those years. Jun Wuyi gasped his breath out after a while. He was seemingly sighing. But that sigh seemed to be related to his lingering attachments. The corners of his mouth rose as he displayed a mournful smile. Yet, it turned extremely tender and sweet as he slowly said, "The grudges are unforgettable. But so are you. I'm love-struck. But only for you. I may travel to hell. But I shall still keep a dream. This thought shall remain immortal in the realms of this world." Dugu Xiao Yi suddenly burst out crying, and started to choke on her tears. Guan Qinghan's pretty face was also full of tears. They knew of his past rather distinctly. And hearing Jun Wuyi state those words left them to shed tears of sadness. Those verses were enough to express how deep the love between Jun Wuyi and Han Yanyao was. The two women felt touched, and their hearts softened. They felt overwhelming sadness in their hearts at the state of his despair. The grudges are unforgettable. But so are you. I'm love-struck. But only for you. I may travel to hell. But I shall still keep a dream. This thought shall remain immortal in the realms of this world. I still love you despite the tragedies that have happened. And I am now going to hell for you. But I still believe that I won't forget you whether I go to heaven or hell. I will never forget you. This thought will remain with me forever. This was love unchanged by life or death. Any other oath or pledge would pale in comparison to this love. Jun Moxie's heart was suddenly shaken inside after he listened to those words spoken by his third uncle. Those feelings of love and hate in his uncle's heart were strong and touching. That meagerly worded verse had admittedly made Jun Moxie realize that his uncle's love would remain unchanged and steady till death. But he understood its other meaning as well. The grudges are unforgettable. But so are you. The grudges had been unexpectedly mentioned before the rest of the verse. The grudges were clearly central in Jun Wuyi's mind. The grudges regarding the death of his two elder brothers and two nephews had been nagging at his heart from the beginning. He couldn't forget what had happened even if got her. He simply couldn't forget it. This was the biggest disease that had plagued his heart. I'll remember it. Rest assured. Third uncle. He had originally planned to divulge his secret to Jun Wuyi to make him feel relieved. He would at most have to weave another bunch of lies to cover up. He would have said that his mysterious master and the Lord of Tian were good friends and so on. However, he changed his mind after he realized those two meanings. Jun Wuyi had steeled himself for death. And this desire had already been rooted deeply in his heart. he would still feel ashamed even after he had gotten revenge for his brothers and nephews. He would still feel very guilty. In fact, he would still feel guilty if he got Han Yen Yao. This emotion would never allow him to be happy. He was destined to be tormented for the remainder of his life. One could easily dispel others' torment. But dispelling the torment at the depth of one's own heart was like bashing one's head against the wall. It couldn't be done. It didn't matter if Jun Xie remained a cripple for his entire life or lived apart from his lover for the entirety of it without any chances of meeting her again. There would still be that unparalleled lifelong enmity. And it would continue to bore down upon Jun Xie. In fact, it wouldn't even let him breathe. And that was merely the external pressure. It couldn't compare to what he felt in the depths of his heart. Every person in the Jun family, whether it was Jun Zhan Tian or Jun Moxie, could only take pity on the third master Jun. Even the deceased Jun Hui wouldn't ever blame his third younger brother. But the only person in the Jun family who didn't realize this, the only person who would never realize this, was Jun Xie. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 348. Don't snatch my husband. Perhaps it had been foreordained by the underworld. Even the gods must have pitied such an unfortunate man. This was a time of crisis, and danger lurked around every nook in the southern heaven city. A strong murderous intention prevailed in the vicinity. In fact, even a chance to make a close escape seemed bleak. Therefore, Jun Xie was convinced that he would die, and that there was no hope for him. However, this danger had been preempted by Jun Moxie's mediation. And so, Jun Xie would return unhurt. In fact, Jun Xie needn't even worry about a sneaky stab in the back. It was guaranteed that he'd be fine, and would return safe and sound. However, the third master Jun didn't know about any of this. So, he was sure that he would die in the battle the following day. But going through mortal danger and surviving a near-death situation could possibly result in a huge change in his attitude. Therefore, this was perhaps an opportune turn of events. And maybe it was better that he didn't know about these turn of events. A person who dies and is given a new lease on life would no longer harbor the same strong and inflexible aspiration to die. They would feel as if they owed something to life. Therefore, they would look at the future with a lot of enthusiasm, and wouldn't wish to part with life very easily anymore. This was a subtle psychological phenomenon. Jun Moxie had realized that his third uncle needed to feel that premonition of death. Therefore, he didn't say anything to dispel it. In fact, he even spoke a few words to stimulate him. Those grudges, what do you wish to speak about them, third uncle? Jun Moxie asked. Third uncle has anyway decided to go over a cliff. So, I might as well add some more fire to it. That'd help him to vent it out in a proper manner. He'll feel much more relaxed tomorrow since he'd have vented it all out. Anyway, these high and dangerous cliffs have already been secured with excellent safety provisions. What I wanted to say regarding those grudges is, Jun Xie gave him a profound look, that they will be avenged. But Moxie, you must promise me something. I won't be able to go with an easy heart if you don't. What is it? Please tell me, uncle. Jun Moxie replied. I know your strength has already far exceeded my imagination. But I still want you to promise that you won't try to take revenge before your strength has reached the level of a supreme master. You will consign the entirety of the Jun family to damnation if you do so. The responsibility of the entire Jun family rests on your shoulders now. You mustn't disappoint me by any means. Jun Wuyi's eyebrows shot up. There was a lot of anguish on his face. He continued to speak with a deep sense of bitterness and hatred. Jun Moxie. Given your wit and talent, I'm sure that the day you take revenge isn't far. So, remember me, your third uncle, when you become strong enough. I don't even wish for a dog or a chicken from the Xiao family to survive. I desire the entirety of it to be consigned to eternal damnation. Jun Xie gnashed his teeth. His usually calm and benevolent face looked very sinister and ruthless. It was justifiable to kill an enemy as per his morals. But he had always believed in the principle that carrying out a vendetta against a woman or child was a crime. This was his usual belief. But he had stated that he didn't even wish the dogs and the chickens to survive. He wanted damnation for all of them. His hatred for the Silver City's Xiao family had already reached such extremes. I will. Uncle. The Xiao family's destruction has been decided. It's like you said, that day isn't far. Jun Moxie also gnashed his teeth as he replied in a vicious manner. He then added, You can go with peace of mind, third uncle. Guan Qinghan wasn't happy to hear those words. Her face still had tear stains as her long and shapely eyebrows shot up. Jun Moxie. You bastard, how could you say such a thing? What do you mean by, go with peace of mind? What are you even saying? Even Dugu Xiaoyi was unhappy with it. She pouted her lips as she looked at Jun Moxie. Her expression was also ill-favored. Jun Moxie raised his hand in surrender. This matter has emotionally touched you women, but I didn't risk the provocation of this matter. You think I would have tried to fabricate such a tense atmosphere? I wasn't prepared for this. And who would be more worried about my uncle's safety than me? Jun Xie then smiled. Guan Qinghan, you're not the Jun family's daughter-in-law anymore. But will you be willing to be my Jun family's daughter? Third uncle? Guan Qinghan was startled, but her spirits lifted a bit. She had been feeling miserable due to the annulment of her marriage. This meant that she'd have to return to the household to the Guan family. And then, she'd have to go to the Shui Hun manor to keep them happy. She was willing to make this sacrifice since she didn't know what else she could do. In contrast, she would have liked to face any suffering or loneliness at the Jun family if she were given a choice. It was needless to say that she didn't wish to marry that scoundrel Teng Yun. Her loathing for him had increased a great deal when she heard him from behind the flap some time ago. Merely glancing at such a scum had been very loathsome for her. So, what could one possibly say about the prospect of marrying him and staying with him for a lifetime? Guan Qinghan listened to Jun Xie and realized that his original intention wasn't to have nothing to do with her. He was merely replacing the method to give her the family's protection. She couldn't help but be extremely moved. Qinghan, I Jun Xie would like to take you as my adopted daughter if you agree to it. I probably don't have long to live. But Qinghan will still be considered a part of the Jun family. And any man will be repaid with a flood of blood by my Jun family if he dares to wrong you. Even your birthing Guan family shan't be an exception to this. Jun Xie snorted coldly after he said that. Guan Qinghan's lips trembled. Her delicate body shuddered violently. However, she didn't hesitate as she slowly knelt and knocked her forehead heavily on the ground. She then spoke. Daughter Qinghan pays her respects to Godfather. Good. 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 Jun Xie was extremely glad. He even exclaimed thrice. Then, he took out a jade pendant and handed it to her. Qinghan, your godfather is giving you this pendant. It is the symbol of the Jun household. Take this. And remember that you're not only the daughter of the Guan family anymore, but you're also the daughter of the Jun family. So, The Guan family will have to consult with our Jun family regarding your marriage. Guan Qinghan took the jade pendant. The words, Qinghan is our descendant, were engraved on its smooth and glossy surface. Moreover, it had been done in Jun Tian's handwriting. So, it was obvious that this had been prepared well in advance. This entire matter wasn't something which had taken place in haste. Guan Qinghan seemed puzzled as she raised her head and looked at Jun Wuyi. Haha. This jade pendant had been commissioned by your grandfather a few years ago. Your grandfather had said then, annul Guan Qinghan's marriage. She won't be the daughter-in-law of our family once that happens. But she'll be our daughter. And I'm fulfilling that old man's wish today. Jun Wuyi chuckled and continued. Qinghan, everyone could see your suffering. We wouldn't let you waste your entire life. And no man will ever be allowed to shame you as long as even one man from the Jun household lives. Jun Wuyi let out a long sigh after he said that. He then continued. Today has passed. And there is that battle tomorrow. So, I don't know if I will see another day after that. Also, there isn't any need to tell you that he ever since you joined the family Moxie he has acted a bit, but you were constrained by your position as his elder sister-in-law. But those worldly restrictions don't stop you two anymore. He gave a dry smile and didn't speak further. However, his meaning was understood by the other three as clear as day. This had shocked the other three individuals to the extreme. The three hadn't understood Jun Wuyi at first. But he had then shot a quick and secretive glance at debauchee after he had finished speaking. This is for you to decide, Moxie. But I can still give you a suggestion, right? Do you wish to let go of this beauty? Or do you wish to light two firecrackers with one flame? You could kill two birds with one stone. But that depends on what you choose. I probably won't be around to witness it anyway. I've spoken these tabooed words today after great difficulty. And I've lost all respect in your eyes as your third uncle. How could I have spoken something like this unless I had known that I wouldn't survive in tomorrow's battle? You're my elder brother's son. So, I've replaced him when it comes to taking control of the task of matchmaking for his son. But to have targeted my dead nephew's woman as my living nephew's wife, and that too someone I've just adopted as a daughter, it's unpleasant to hear no matter what else it might be. You must understand that saying this was even harder than dying. Okay? Jun Moxie looked at his uncle dumbfounded. Third uncle. You dug up this dredge for your nephew? You're thinking about this one day before the decisive battle? I don't admire you for the thoughts you harbor at the brink of your death. But I do admire you for the courage to say them out loud. Guan Qinghan's entire body started to tremble. Her pretty face had turned red. The redness had also reached her neck. In fact, her tiny white earlobe was red as well, bright red. She felt extremely embarrassed as she shot accusatory stares to her side. Her mouth was opened as big as a hippopotamus as she glanced at Jun Moxie. But she hung her head low after a moment. Debauchee was standing beside them. It was like she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes were opened wide, and her lovely face had become deathly pale. No traces of blood were left in it. I'm being referred to as a witness, right? And heavens, I have witnessed. But why do I feel that I will never witness marital bliss? What's this feeling called? The little girl started to worry about her personal gains and losses. And she became extremely nervous thereafter. She looked at Guan Winghan, and the look in her eyes changed. That benevolent and kind-hearted spirit of an elder sister had turned into a malevolent and frightening existence in a moment's time. She wants to take my man away. Every matter was open for discussion, except for this one. The little girl was furious. She rolled her eyes and exerted the entirety of her strength to think of countermeasures. Debauchee had been very delighted this entire time since she was the only one who knew of Jun Moxie's good personality. Everyone else regarded him as a lecher, hoodlum, bully, debauchee, and a skirt chaser. The little girl had always felt very pleased with this fact. It was like someone was happy since they possessed a secret stash of treasure. She obviously couldn't speak that thought out loud. Everyone would try to snatch him away if they got to know about it. Brother Moxie is mine. He's meant for me alone. Therefore, Debauchee had feelings of extreme tenderness towards Jun Moxie. She wanted to make him her own and, as soon as possible. She knew that gold always finds a way to shine. So, she wouldn't be able to monopolize him if others found out about this. She wanted to keep him all to herself until he was no good for anyone else. But, what is this old man saying? Princess Ling Meng had suddenly come up with that blood oath that day. The motive was different, but it had still startled Debauchee. However, she was very fortunate since Jun Moxie felt nothing for her. So, that was still an acceptable thing. There was another reason why Debauchee was determined to accompany Jun Moxie to the southern heaven city. As the saying goes, those who strike first gain the advantage. It would have been too late if the princess decided to get serious and got the emperor to sign an imperial decree for the marriage. So, she had painstakingly formulated a plan to garner his affections. And her plan required Guan Qinghan's assistance in order to enhance her chances of success. But her plan was suddenly struck by thunder from the clear sky when she heard third Uncle Jun refer to Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan as a couple. The hen had changed into a duck, the helper had transformed into a rival. This had resulted in her becoming worse off than she had started. She had become the victim of her own ingenuity. How is this possible? This won't do. Debauchee started to get angrier with every passing moment. Her tiny chest started to fill with righteous indignation as she thought about it. And then, she unexpectedly roared out loud. Her voice was loud and fierce. In fact, it was very fierce and very loud. It shook the entire tent and buzzed as it echoed for a while. The other three individuals were given a fright by her roar and jumped startled before they looked at her. Debauchee couldn't be shy in this moment. She scrambled and stepped forward. She then clutched Jun Moxie's arm and declared, "He's mine, and mine alone. You can't snatch him away in marriage." Then, she suddenly felt wronged after she had spoken that. She then started to sob incessantly and wept as she spoke. "I've been eyeing him for a long time. How can you snatch him away from me? He's mine. And mine alone. I won't let you take him away." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 349. The hero won't be alone. Debauchee's tone was that of a child whose candy had been snatched away. Or like that of a child who had been waiting under a tree for a fruit to ripen for half a year. But then, two people suddenly come up and take a look at the fruit and start to discuss how to distribute the fruit amongst themselves while completely ignoring the waiting child. They've forgotten about me. She had been driven mad and felt wronged. Jun Moxie and the other two stared wide-eyed and broke into laughter almost at the same time. The actions of this little girl were too adorable. She had completely driven off the heavy load on Jun Moxie's mind and the embarrassment that Guan Qinghan had initially felt. The three individuals were staring at her. So, Dugu Xiao Yi couldn't help but react. She pouted and proclaimed whilst seething with rage, "Mine." She finished speaking and realized that she had completely forgotten her manners. Not to mention that she and Jun Moxie weren't even engaged. And so, she was in no position to make such thoughtless remarks. Moreover, the third Master Jun was most probably approaching the end of his life. This was another reason for her to not make such a ruckus. Plus, she had done this while acting as a witness. So, she really shouldn't have done that at that point. Moreover, were those words sure indicators of his marriage to his elder sister-in-law? She had also forgotten her status as the only daughter of the Dugu family. The little girl couldn't help her face turning red with embarrassment. She quickly released her hold on Jun Moxie's arm. She bit her lip and stood embarrassed for a bit. The little girl had no idea what she could do to remedy it. The little girl opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Jun Wu Yi. Guan Qinghan and Jun Moxie didn't know what to do to smooth things over either. The three people had been shaken by the thunderous and valiant actions of the little girl, and hadn't yet recovered from it. The four people stared at each other wide-eyed for a while. It was a deadlock. Then, the little girl screeched like a bird. She then covered her face, which was now hot with embarrassment, and rushed out like she was being chased by a dog. And then, a loud thump was heard. Though, no one knew what she hit. Moxie, haha, you've got quite the charm. To draw the treasure of the Dugu family to become jealous for your affection is quite exceptional. Jun Wu Yi smiled in a jubilant manner. Guan Qinghan may be undecided, but he could clearly see that the Dugu girl already had deep feelings for his nephew. He could obviously let go of any worry he might have had for his nephew's marriage. Moreover, one couldn't forget about the little girl's family background. The two families were well matched in terms of social status as well. The emperor may be against their family, but even the emperor would have to consider his actions better if the Jun and the Dugu family were connected by marriage. His nephew's good deeds had been harmonious. So, the uncle would go to the otherworld with a smile even if his body would turn into a bloody corpse the next day. The only thing was that it was probably a tough scenario where he'd be able to drink at his nephew's wedding. The young Master Jun was also quite embarrassed. He opened his mouth several times to speak, but he was unable to say even half a word. He genuinely didn't know when he had become that little girl's private property. He eventually had no choice but to spread his hands and shrug his shoulders. It looked like he would cry as he forced a smile and spoke up with a lot of difficulty. "I look handsome, this isn't my problem, how can I be guilty?" Guan Qinghan's felt her face turn cold again. She snorted and stayed silent for a while. Then, her face suddenly became red. In fact, it had started to resemble a bright red cloud. Jun Wu Yi smiled in an elated manner. He also felt that he hadn't acted with the dignity of the elder generation. More so since it involved his recently adopted daughter. He smiled in an awkward manner and waved his hands as he spoke. "You go back. I wish to think about tomorrow's battle in silence." Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan looked at each other and retreated. The young Master Jun wanted to say something to Guan Qinghan, but she disappeared without a shadow as they went out of the tent, since the expression on her face had become even more shy and anxious. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh and looked up at the moon in the sky. He then assumed an annoying and narcissistic attitude. Then, he lowered his head and spoke in a coquettish and muffled manner. "I'm able to make such beauties fall for me. My spotless personality makes beautiful women blush. These women wish to elope with me." He walked forward and returned to his tent while continually narrating narcissistic accounts of himself on the way. Inside the tent, Jun Xie flicked his sleeve and extinguished the lights inside the tent. The tent went pitch black. The soft moonlight started to come in after a while. The wicks of the recently extinguished candles still glowed orange. A slight smoke still rose from them only to dissipate in the air above. The black-clothed Jun Xie's silhouette slowly got concealed in the darkness. But it remained motionless. The three Dongfang brothers put their hands on their swords while they stood outside. They remained motionless and didn't utter a single word. They had decided to accompany their younger brother in silence. That night was perhaps the last night of Jun Xie's life, the third Master Jun's last night amongst the living. Their blood brother was going to go far into the netherworld. He would then be away from those who were close to him. But the hero wouldn't be lonely when he was at the end of the road. We will keep him company. Guan Qinghan stood not too far from Jun Xie's tent. Tears flowed down her beautiful face in silence. She stood there motionless and didn't dare to utter a word. Uncle Godfather, you won't be alone tonight. Her first evening as his daughter might have also been her last evening as one. The entire field was quiet. A group of soldiers came from the Tian Xiang's army. They wore helmets and were armored and armed to the teeth. They stood tall and straight like pikes outside the tent in an orderly formation. They were real men, and their eyes had a fervent feel to them. So much so that everyone tried their best to reduce the sound of their breathing. These men had come to fight a battle. So they could have been asked to throw away their lives in the process. But the commander of their army had chosen to sacrifice only his own self. The commander will go to battle tomorrow. But we will keep him company tonight. The commander shouldn't be alone. The hero shouldn't be alone. The blood general was an idol for the army. This illustrious name was engraved in the military men's hearts like his elder brother Jun Xie's name was the White Commander. They had become immortal in their hearts. And so had their achievements, the legend of the blood general's achievements. The beautiful and serene moonlight slowly rose and spread throughout the sky. It splendidly bathed the mountains and forests surrounding the southern heaven city. However, no one knew how many men's blood would spill in the battle the next day. A faint silhouette suddenly swept in and out of the tent and disappeared into the air. In fact, it seemed as if it had melted into it. The three spirit Xian Dongfang brothers had been stationed close by. They could faintly feel that something had moved above their heads. However, they were stunned to find no trace of anything. Jun Xie was in the tent. He had also noticed it very faintly. But he didn't care. He didn't care at all. It might have been a top assassin who had been sent to kill him. But what's the worst that could have happened even then? He was already going down the road to the underworld and his demise the next day. So, what was the big deal? Therefore, he didn't care about it. And the others weren't even aware of the traces of that movement. Jun Moxie finally dazzled past the last person he wanted to save in the battle, and returned the small bottle back inside his pocket. I hope Long Crane's bottle works. I'll have to work against a strong tide to save everyone if it doesn't. But wouldn't it be a nice surprise if third uncle returns safe and sound when he's expected to be done for? The glowing moon eventually set, and the east gradually became brighter. The light of dawn has always followed darkness. Jun Xie slowly stood up. Then, he took 2 steps, and hesitantly sat down on his wheelchair. His legs had become fine by now. The movement and skills he hadn't been able to employ for the past 10 years had been restored. But He couldn't show it to everyone else at that point of time since it would mean endless trouble for his Jun family if he did. Therefore, he would have to close his eyes and die with a contented heart in this manner only. The outcome will anyway be the same since I'm faced with such high-level Xian beasts. I will die one way or the other. So what's the use of creating unnecessary accusations and troubles for my family? He slowly turned his wheelchair. Then, he motioned with his right hand. And the ancestral sword flew through the air and came to his hand. He opened the flaps and went out. But something happened outside. This left him startled. In fact, it had given him a bit of a fright. Even the usually calm and collected Jun Xie was scared by the terrifying scene outside. The Dongfang brothers were standing outside. They had been waiting for Jun Wue. Dongfang Wenqing smiled as he quickly walked behind him and started to push the wheelchair. There was a huge crowd on both the sides. Nearly 20,000 officers and men were stationed on the two sides. They stood silently in an orderly manner. They looked at him with reverence as their eyes reddened with emotions. Jun Wuyi's eyes also somewhat reddened as he said, "What's all this? Everyone ought to leave. It's not like we're parting forever. So, why all this?" No one moved an inch. What, not parting forever? They knew everything. Jun Wue was silent for a while. His eyes looked at each and every familiar face on his sides. The commander's expression was complicated. His expression then became steady as he softly commanded, "The men who shall go to war today step forward." 300 men stood out in an orderly manner at Jun Wuyi's command. There were a few who hesitated a bit at first. But they finally refused to turn back and fell into formation. So, there was now a large square behind Jun Wue. Dongfang Wenqing slowly pushed the wheelchair, and the 300 men behind them followed after with large strides. They were moving away when a loud shout interrupted their procession. "Wait!" Jun Moxie had a solemn expression on his face as he waved his hand. "How can we not have wine when we send off the brave heroes of Tian to war? I have the best quality wine to match the occasion." Moxie wishes the gentleman a safe and prosperous battle, and hopes that everyone returns in glory. Someone appeared from behind Jun Moxie. This individual held a wine jar. Others appeared and handed cups to everyone. Then, the wine was poured into everyone's cups. There was a sense of regret in the depth of Jun Moxie's eyes. He may have had some conflict with a few of those men, but they now stood resolutely behind his uncle. Moreover, they stood with pride even though they knew that they were about to die. In fact, not a single one of them had cowered. That was sufficient to earn Jun Moxie's respect. They stood unchanged in the face of such adversity whether they had been good men or bad. And this made them heroes. In fact, only such a man can be called a hero. Heroes don't have good or bad personalities. But I'm sorry. I could have saved you. It would have been easy for me. But I can't do it. People must die in a battle. Even more so in a battle we're about to lose. For third uncle's sake, for Jun family's sake, I can't save you. I'm sorry. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 350. Internal Strife. Jun Moxie raised his wine cup and drained it with closed eyes. He remembered a poem and couldn't help but sing, "What is today's death? It's tough to fight the battles of life. This is just the plot of the deceased from the past. The kings of hell beheads many a banners." Then, There was a bang. Jun Xie had thrown his cup down. His body appeared tall and lofty as he sat atop his horse, and declared, "It's needless to say that the families of you 300 men will be taken care of by the Jun family from now. Whether in their old age or their marriage, they can count on our family as long as a Jun still lives. I, Jun Xie, won't allow a single one of them to be wronged. Many thanks, young Master Jun. We will return this favor from the Jun family in the next life." The faces of all the 300 men were grateful. They had steeled themselves for the decisive battle. But not only because of the lofty and heroic Jun Wei, but because of martial law as well. Their parents, their children, their wives, their entire families would suffer from the stigma of their cowardly reputation if they became scared in face of battle. So, they had to keep their head up. The situation was extremely difficult, but they simply couldn't refute. However, they were afraid of dying in the end. The great and towering heroes may have met their fates with dignity and without any complaints since ancient times. But they hadn't necessarily desired to die. And it was the same for those ordinary men at this moment. However, they felt like they were going to die for a bosom friend when they heard Jun Xie speak. They knew that they would die in the decisive battle ahead. And they couldn't help but wonder about their families in this moment. However, the person they had looked at with the most dislike had become the source of their comfort. And his solemn promise had left them to feel relieved. What does a man live his life for? For whose sake does he toil and labor so hard? What does he fight those bloody battles for? He does it for his parents, wife and children. The thoughts of glory and wealth take a back seat, especially before a final battle to the death. The only thing they felt anxious about was the family they were leaving behind. But Jun Xie had promised to deal with the issue. They were unaware that he had made that decision due to the feeling of guilt. But they still felt assured. They would face death with a peaceful mind. The 300 men then took a knee and drained their cups. Then, they gave Jun Xie a profound look before they got up to their feet. They then went their way without turning or even looking back. This is just the plot of the deceased from the past. The kings of hell beheads many a banners. Jun Wei laughed and continued, "This is a good poem. There are indeed countless of my good brothers there." Then, he ordered in a low voice, "Move." 20,000 cavalry men dismounted, kneeled, and spoke in unison, "We pay great respects to the commander. May he return safely, and with glory. May he return safely, and with glory." These words made Jun Wei's body stiff. But he didn't turn to look. The three Dongfang brothers' bodies were straight as a ramrod as they slowly pushed his wheelchair forward. Faint sobs could be heard behind them. The 20,000 kneeling soldiers couldn't get up. The southern heaven cities' war banners fluttered. A force of 4,000 was silently waiting at the city gates in formation. Jun Wei was on his wheelchair. He looked tranquil. Whether he would live or died was irrelevant. He had already disregarded the thoughts of his life and death. Xiao Han and the others also stood in formation. They gave Jun Wei a meaningful look. Their clever trick had succeeded. So, they looked complacent at the moment. That thorn in the back wouldn't be so lucky that day no matter what. They needn't act themselves since this plot had worked in the coy of the most legitimate excuse. He would now be forced to go into danger, and wouldn't return from this road. Li Ju Tian, Solitary Falcon, Lei Wu Bei, Shi Chang Xiao, Feng Wanyun stood not too far from there. Those 5 men looked into the distant from their side. Li Tengyun and the others from every powerful family stood behind them as spectators of the battle. Each individual had a different expression on their face. They obviously had different thoughts going through their minds. Are the odds of today's battle genuinely unknown? Feng Wanyun graced black clothes, black hair and black scabbard on his body. He stood as straight as a javelin as he looked at the tranquil Jun Wuyi who was at the head of the formation. He felt sorry in his heart. Such an excellent man of his generation will die before my eyes. And I still can't do a thing to help. There's no scope of any odds. Solitary Falcon's face was gloomy. And his eyes had hint of anger that was already teetering on the edge of fury. He was on the verge of exploding. He had never harbored an iota of respect for Li Tian. But his resentment towards that man had reached a point of extremity at this juncture. That day was the first time that these two men who had been rivals for half their lives, Solitary Falcon and Feng Wanyun, were of the same opinion. Shi Changxiao stood on the side. He also had an expression of eventuality on his face. Lei Wubei stood stone-faced. And Li Tian stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was tranquil. But he was brimming with the arrogance. This showed his belief that only he reigned unbridled and supreme. Li Tian regarded himself as impervious. Other people's point of view didn't matter to him. I will decide whether my way of handling things is brilliant or dishonorable. I will take out anyone who refuses me. Even if you're a great master of equal fame, it doesn't matter to me. I'll fix you the moment you dare open your mouth. The clenched fist is the strongest argument. Feng Wanyun sighed. He suddenly became determined to become the strongest great master. The man couldn't understand this strange feeling. But he was sick of Li Tian's conduct. In what way is his bearing that of the second strongest man in the world? He's overbearing when he hides his flaws and acts in a tyrannical manner. There isn't a single good thing about him except for his earth-shattering strength. Moreover, Feng Wanyun couldn't tolerate the collaboration between the Shui Han Manor and the Silver Blizzard City in this matter. How could they decide to settle personal grudges at such a critical point of time? You are aware that this battle will decide the future interactions between the Xian experts of this continent and the Tian Fa forest. Yet you're conspiring at such an important juncture to entrap that man into leading the troops. Moreover, you're even rushing to save your own high-ranking members. Where is your conscience? Where's your morality? Moreover, Li Tian and the Silver Blizzard City have enough power to individually retreat to safety if the Xian beasts win this war against the humans. But the lives of millions of the general public will be in grave danger if this uprising makes its way to the inland. It will be a huge calamity. This Li Tian and the other spirit Xian experts can't see it. The Silver Blizzard City may retreat to the top of the mountains and distance itself from everything. But it can't hope to stay away from the outside world eternally. Feng Wanyun was a lone and free swordsman. But his cold exterior hid a warm heart and a chivalrous personality. He didn't indulge in crafty plots. Nor did he use his strength to bully the weak. Such lowly tricks and schemes weren't fit for a hero in his mind. He couldn't tolerate them at all. What's the point of being a great master if one has such a temperament? Wouldn't the name of the great masters be blackened if we lose this war? And this catastrophe travels thousands of miles inland? How will we shed this infamy off? How will the great master rise to fame after this? How would I know the odds of life and death in this battle? Oh, just let those 4,000 go fight and risk their lives. What can we do, right? So, let's just look at the drama, right? Feng Wanyun sneered and continued. I came from afar to help in the fight for the southern heaven city. Even the common folk around the world have lent their strength. And the Shui Han Manor has only sent its henchmen. Why don't you send me to fight? You have only sent some sky and earth Xian experts. What's the use of that? He was a proud man, and had already endured a lot. But he couldn't endure it any longer at that point. In fact, this man would have spoken candidly even if he were in front of the emperor. What is the use? I'm afraid that isn't for you to decide. Feng Wanyun. And my Shui Han Manor can't use a high-level expert like yourself in place of a lackey. Li Ju Tian crossed his hands behind his back. He didn't even turn as he softly spoke. Brother Feng can voluntarily leave if he finds this unpleasant or wrong. And he's wholly welcome if he feels that I have been mistaken, and feels like teaching me a lesson for it. I don't have the capability to teach Great Master Tian. I know this. Feng Wanyun replied coldly. I don't wish to teach you a lesson. His meaning had been clearly implied in his words. I will have to go looking for my teeth if I attacked you. Feng Wanyun. I respect you as a great master. But you're still not happy with what you've got. Who do you think you are? Who do you think this is? Since when did you have the guts to be so unreasonable in front of my father? Li Tengyun stomped his foot and shouted from behind. Feng Wanyun's expression became as cold as ice. Bang! Li Tengyun went flying and somersaulting. His face had swollen. You impudent bastard! Are you calling Feng Wanyun's name into question? Two figures had flitted into action. But the attack had been the solitary falcon's doing. He was the only one who could catch up to Feng Wanyun's speed in that gathering. He had seen Feng Wanyun's hand move, and had understood the discouraging outcome of it. Therefore, he rushed to slap Li Tengyun first. In fact, he had already struck Li Tengyun by the time Feng Wanyun's hand reached the top of his sword's hilt. Who was Feng Wanyun? Was he someone Li Tengyun could insult? Li Tengyun was the son of the second great master. But he was like an ant in Feng Wanyun's eyes. Jun Moxie would have perhaps used an ancient poem to describe Feng Wanyun. Kill a man every 10 steps. And no one will be left after 1,000 miles. No one in this world would have been able to save Li Tengyun if Feng Wanyun's hand had reached his sword's hilt unless the solitary falcon hadn't moved into action. Even Li Ju Tian couldn't have helped his own son. Feng Wanyun had the strength of a great master once he had his sword in his hand. No other sword could have saved Li Tengyun if he had attacked. Solitary Falcon took action and taught Li Tengyun a lesson. He not only saved the boy's life in doing so, but he also saved Feng Wanyun's life. After all, Li Ju Tian would have chased him around to kill him if he had killed Li Tengyun. Then, Feng Wanyun's life would have ended as well. The trade would have ended with Feng Wanyun's life for Li Tengyun's. But that low-life scoundrel wasn't worth it. Solitary Falcon and Feng Wanyun had been fighting each other for decades, but had slowly recognized each other's worth over the years. They had become natural friends as a result, despite the fact that they were rivals. Therefore, it was only natural for Solitary Falcon to defuse the situation in his stead. The other person who had moved into action was Shi Changxiao, contrary to what everyone would have expected. He had thought of the same thing that the Solitary Falcon had. In fact, he had gone one step further. The alliance would have collapsed if two great masters were to start fighting against each other. It wouldn't bode well for the mainland's sake if the allied forces were to witness an internal strife and collapse as a result. It was just that Shi Changxiao was a step behind the Solitary Falcon in terms of speed. This story will be continued to chapter 351. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.